Chapter 1477. The Star Alliance also had individual strength, but compared to the three universal civilizations, their top combatants were too few and too weak. With Han Zhao's abilities, he could do whatever he wanted here. In addition, the virtual network of the entire Star Alliance area was under the surveillance of Han Zhao, a transcendent grade mechanic. The whereabouts of the upper echelons of the various Star Alliance members could not be hidden at all. Han Zhao was like an eagle pouncing on chicks, constantly teleporting and flashing, accurately intercepting the evacuation fleets of the upper echelons of the Star Alliance members one after another. He did not miss a single time, and even the leader of the Star Alliance did not manage to escape. He was also captured by him. In just a few days, the leaders and upper echelons of the 46 civilizations in the Star Alliance became Han Zhao's prisoners. One civilization after another lost the command from the upper echelons. Some civilizations had a good system and continued to carry out the migration plan through the command chain at the bottom. Some civilizations were rather decisive, and some took up the position of the upper echelons. However, most of them fell into different degrees of chaos. The intelligence of the world tree and the three universal civilizations was a secret of the upper echelons of the Star Alliance. The people and the officers knew nothing about it. They did not know what the World Tree fleet represented, nor did they have the strong fear of the World Tree civilization that the upper echelons of the Star Alliance had nurtured for many years. Therefore, after the upper echelons of the various civilizations disappeared, many civilizations launched an intense counterattack, as if they were newborn calves who were not afraid of tigers. However, due to the collective absence of the upper echelons, the internal secrets were leaked under the influence of a certain force, and it quickly spread among the Star Alliance's grassroots. Most people understood the source of the disaster and learned how terrifying the World Tree civilization was, as well as the current situation where the World Tree civilization was at war with the three universal civilizations. As for the operation of the upper echelons of the Star Alliance, taking advantage of the situation under Han Zhao's control, it was not announced. It was still a secret. Because the World Tree's mechanism was too terrifying, the morale of many civilizations was reduced by more than half. What completely destroyed the will of the various civilizations in the Star Alliance was the invasion of another armed force. This time, the army that landed in the Star Alliance was the army of the three universal civilizations that was supposed to be fighting the World Tree. They had also become attackers. The morale of the Star Alliance completely collapsed. Faced with the pincer attack of two universal civilizations, they no longer had the courage to resist and could only flee in panic. The entire Star Alliance's battle situation slid into the abyss at lightning speed. All the resistance forces were paralyzed and destroyed by the three universal civilizations and the World Tree. Countless spaceships fled the Star Alliance's territory in a hurry, and it was already a mess. Only a month had passed since the World Tree civilization and the three universal civilizations invaded the Star Alliance. In reality, if the Star Alliance could unify all of its powers, they would at least have a universe-level standard. They wouldn't be so useless, and they would still be able to resist for a period of time if they worked together. However, it happened too suddenly, and there were too many internal differences, making it impossible for them to form an effective counterattack. The current situation of the Star Alliance was like the three universal civilizations that had been ambushed by the World Tree in his previous life. Furthermore, the situation was even worse, and they were caught off guard. If the Star Alliance was given some time, they might be able to recover from the chaos after suffering heavy losses and form various scattered civilian resistance forces. However, there was no chance now. All the upper echelons of the Star Alliance civilizations that were captured by Han Zhao were not executed, nor were they immediately devoured and transformed by the World Tree. Instead, they were all locked in the same cage and were not tortured physically. However, there were virtual screens floating in the cage, broadcasting the tragic situation of their various civilizations under the attack of the World Tree all day long, making it impossible for all the upper echelons of the Star Alliance to rest peacefully. They endured the psychological torture, and everyone was extremely haggard. Every day, As they watched the World Tree Fleet destroy the Star Alliance, everyone was shocked, angry, and filled with fear and despair. They were in a state of panic. After the three universal civilizations attacked the Star Alliance on the screen, all the imprisoned upper echelons of the Star Alliance were stunned, and their minds went blank. They had thought that the World Tree was fighting on two fronts, but they did not expect the three universal civilizations to attack them as well. In an instant, their previous guesses were overturned, and everyone was shocked. Why would the three universal civilizations invade our territory with a World Tree civilization? Aren't they still fighting? The Haggard Star Alliance leader's voice was hoarse with unconcealable shock and confusion. Did they give up and make peace? No, how is that possible? They shouldn't have given up until they die. Isn't the World Tree unable to coexist with any civilization? Someone muttered in disbelief. Savines opened his bloodshot blue eyes and hissed, "There's only one possibility, and that is that the three universal civilizations have already been devoured and transformed by the World Tree, becoming its slaves and losing their freedom. In other words, their civilization has already been destroyed." Ah, woo-woo. As he spoke, Savines revealed an ugly expression. It was as if he was crying and laughing at the same time, with an inexplicable ruthlessness and joy. Among all the Star Alliance civilizations that were attacked, the Lore civilization was the most miserable. They were targeted by the World Tree and the three universal civilizations. Savines watched the tragic scenes his race experienced every day, and his mental state was on the verge of collapse. In his eyes, although he was about to face destruction, at least the three universal civilizations were gone. His revenge had succeeded, and he had already dragged his enemies down with him, destroying the prosperous world of the three universal civilizations. Hearing this, everyone nodded silently. They all agreed that the three universal civilizations had become the vassals of the World Tree civilization. However, unlike Savines, the other upper echelons of the Star Alliance did not feel any joy, only fear. Originally, a single World Tree civilization was enough to destroy the Star Alliance. Now, the other party had even absorbed the forces of the three universal civilizations, completing the reinforcement. It was equivalent to two universal civilizations attacking from both sides. No matter how they thought about it, they felt that the Star Alliance had no chance of surviving. Their hearts were filled with despair, and their expressions were numb. Swoosh! At this moment, the door of the cage opened, and everyone turned around. A figure walked in against the light of the corridor outside, revealing an expressionless face. It was Han Xiao. "Everyone, have you been living comfortably?" Han Xiao spoke with an emotionless tone. Black Star. Everyone subconsciously shrank back as fear appeared on their faces. Only Savines did not retreat. Instead, he took a few steps forward nervously with a ferocious smile on his face. He stretched out his hands as if he wanted to grab Han Xiao's shoulders. "Pa!" Before he could take a few steps, an invisible force swept out and sent Savines flying. His body was stuck to the wall of the prison with a bang. However, Savines did not seem to feel any pain at all. Instead, he laughed crazily as if he was about to stop breathing. "Ha ha, Black Star. Your three universal civilizations have also suffered a crushing defeat and become slaves of the World Tree. We will also become members of the World Tree. We are just equal existences to you. We will all end up the same. Don't think that anyone has won." Ha cough ha! The upper echelons of the Star Alliance looked at the crazed Savines and remained silent. There was only dejection on their faces, and there was even pity in their eyes when they looked at Han Xiao. Although they were destined to become members of the World Tree and did not seem to be dead, losing themselves was no different from death in their eyes. Seeing this, Han Xiao knew what they were thinking. He did not mind and shook his head. "Do you think the three universal civilizations have become slaves of the World Tree? A reasonable deduction, an interesting guess. Unfortunately, it's a completely wrong conclusion." Without waiting for anyone to react, he raised his palm. A pocket-sized shadow of the Tree of World immediately appeared in his palm. It spun and emitted an astonishingly high-level pressure, so intimidating that everyone present felt weak all over and couldn't stand. One by one, they collapsed to the ground. "Our war has already ended, but you guessed wrong. The world tree has been captured by me and has now become my universal treasure. In other words, I am a master of the world tree civilization. As soon as he finished speaking, Savine's crazy and hoarse laughter stopped abruptly, like a screaming chicken that had its throat pinched. He widened his eyes and stared at Han Xiao. Impossible. I don't believe it. The intelligence clearly said that the world tree civilization had the upper hand and almost destroyed. Oh, you're talking about the intelligence sent back by the group of monitors you left in the desolate universe belt? Without waiting for Savines to finish, Han Xiao interrupted him and smiled playfully. I got someone to make up those battle reports. Are you happy enough? As soon as he said that, it was as if he had pressed the mute button. Savine's anger froze on his face, and the others widened their eyes. The room suddenly fell silent. Han Xiao blinked and slowly said, Your spies have long been discovered by us and transformed into servants of the world tree. They have been sending you fake information, making you think that we are still in the middle of a war. In fact, we have already taken care of the world tree more than a year ago. What you see is an illusion that we deliberately made up. At this moment, everyone's expressions were extremely interesting. Thinking of the pleasant surprise they had received every time they saw the battle report over the past year, everyone felt as uncomfortable as if they had eaten something delicious. It turned out that they had been foolishly laughing at the fake information that others had made up. They had been complacent and smug about it, and they had been toyed with by others. At this moment, everyone wished they could tear off their faces and throw them somewhere they could no longer see. At the same time, an even deeper sense of despair rose in everyone's hearts. After knowing that this was a mixed double battle, everyone completely lost all hope. Their faces were extremely gloomy, and they knew that the Star Alliance was finished. Seeing this, Han Xiao shook his head. Actually, he felt that the Star Alliance was quite unlucky. Even if these people did not take advantage of the situation to stab the three universal civilizations in the back, when he defeated the World Tree, he would still use the Information Form Warning Network to cover all the star fields in his territory. This way, the Star Alliance would still have nowhere to hide and would still be exposed. At that time, the Star Alliance would still be watched and vigilant by the three universal civilizations, and their outcome would not be any better. Therefore, the moment the Star Alliance sent spies to investigate the Galactic Society, their outcome was almost destined. The leader of the Star Alliance clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. What do you want to do to us if you don't devour us? Han Xiao glanced at them and said, I need everyone's cooperation. As you can see, we have the ability to destroy all the civilizations in the Star Alliance, but I will give your race a chance. Stop resisting, choose to submit, and become our subsidiary. Only then will we give you the right to continue. You can completely devour us. Why are you doing this? The leader of the Star Alliance was furious. I like it. Han Xiao raised his brows. He paused for a moment, glanced at everyone, and continued. Think about it. You only have one chance. At this moment, Savine suddenly roared and interrupted him. We will never give up our freedom and become the World Tree's vassals. Don't even think about enslaving us. However, before he could finish, Han Xiao flicked his finger and mechanical particles flew out, forming a mechanical closure device that covered the lower half of Savine's face, blocking his roar back into his chest. Han Xiao retracted his gaze and said with a calm expression, It seems like he has already made his choice. Before the lore civilization is destroyed, he will not be executed. He will be here to see the results of his choice. Everyone, it's your turn. Because I was interrupted just now, I'll repeat myself. The three universal civilizations can destroy you effortlessly. If you refuse me, you won't even have the chance to reproduce under the World Tree's jurisdiction. Destroy or continue. Think carefully. Everyone's expressions were uncertain as they fell into an endless dilemma. They knew that this was an example to others, but this move was still very effective. They wanted to say that they would never become slaves, but looking at the miserable state of their race on the virtual screen, they felt the burden on their shoulders become heavier and heavier, making them unable to open their mouths. At this moment, mechanical particles flowed out from under Han Zhao's robe and turned into a fixed cabin, locking Savines up and making him unable to move. This attracted everyone's sympathetic gazes. Don't worry, you have plenty of time. Before our fleet destroys your civilization, you can hesitate as much as you want. After all, the ones dying in battle are not you. Han Xiao said this and left under everyone's terrified and unwilling gazes. The cell door closed behind him, cutting off Savine's struggling groans. Han Xiao did not stop walking, and the officers of the three universal civilizations were already waiting at the door. Seeing this, they quickly followed. Your Excellency Black Star, thank you for your hard work, Tenny said. It's nothing. I'll leave the rest to you guys. Han Xiao waved his hands. He had already helped to this extent, and the Star Alliance had already lost the ability to resist. The rest of the work was enough to leave to the three universal civilizations. With the World Tree Civilization working together, he did not need to do anything else. The three universal civilizations were still capable of completing such a simple task. I didn't expect it to be resolved so smoothly. A civilization that has stepped into the threshold of the universe level was easily disintegrated in such a short time. My organization has actually expanded to this level. Han Xiaoxin sighed inwardly before striding away. Chapter 1478. After dealing with the upper echelons of the Star Alliance, Han Xiao became the boss. The three universal civilizations and the World Tree Civilization were in charge of the subsequent cleanup and recruitment operations. Because the Star Alliance's resistance had basically collapsed, this was a time-consuming and effortless task for the three universal civilizations. They methodically cleaned up the civilization migration troops in the Star Alliance. Originally, the Rare War mission was a large-scale event that the players were passionate about, but this time, the three universal civilizations did not issue a large-scale summoning order. Only a small number of players were summoned to deal with the Star Alliance, and more players focused on their own pro league. After a long period of preparation, the qualifiers had already begun, and it was now at the climax. Therefore, most of the players were not interested in the Star Alliance war. They only wanted to hurt each other and participate in the new pro league. Because Han Xiao had been farming the Sanctum Authority and working for the truth of the universe's iteration, he did not pay attention to the situation of the players' pro league. Now that he had the time to take a look, he realized that the biggest special feature of this pro league was that the combat level had increased significantly. The mainstream competition level had already increased from Grade B to Calamity Grade, and their destructive power had increased greatly. It was now version 5 compared to version 4.0. The level cap had increased from level 150 to level 200. The series of missions of the World Tree War had made the players a lot. Although they had watched a wave of cinematics during the final battle, the Victory Settlement had brought the players a shocking amount of benefits. During the fourth season of the Pro League, the mainstream players were basically Grade B. Although they were considered the backbone of the universe, in the eyes of the top combatants, they were still noobs. In the fifth season of the Pro League, the gap between the players was even greater. Now, the main players of the Pro League had to be at the Calamity Grade, and their battles were very good. In the Super's Holy Land, on an uninhabited planet, in Arena number 24 of the qualifiers, the battleships of the player guilds floated in midair and watched the battle on the ground. They saw two yellow dragons entangling and colliding with each other. From time to time, shockwaves would burst out, causing spiderweb-like cracks to appear on the ground within a few kilometers. Two players in heavy armor were moving rapidly on the planet's surface, constantly exchanging blows with each other. They were like walking natural disasters, but their IDs were unfamiliar. They were not professional players from any guild, just ordinary players participating in the competition. These were just two unknown players, but their destructive power was already very outstanding. Many of the players in the sky couldn't take their eyes off them. Because the players had stepped into the Calamity Grade in batches, their strength had increased collectively, and many people's combat power had undergone a qualitative change. In order to ensure viewership ratings and prevent the professional players of some large guilds from really failing in the qualifiers, many large clubs had obtained a direct pass to the official league, not needing to take the risk in the qualifiers. Although this made the preliminaries less exciting, the players were still very excited because there were so many dark horses. The overall destructive power of the players is getting stronger and stronger. In outer space, Han Zhao's virtual projection overlooked the planet, taking in the scene of the players' battle. He was in stealth mode, so the other players couldn't see his projection. They were still focused on the match and didn't look up at the sky. Let the players grow a few more versions, and a level cap will be unlocked more and more. They will definitely become the new source of chaos. Han Zhao's eyes moved slightly as he muttered to himself. Now that the Galactic Society had formed a new stable structure, it would basically maintain overall peace for a long time. This was a good thing for the galactic residents, but it was a bad thing for the players. After experiencing the events of several versions, the players had already eaten big fish and meat and seen big scenes. It would definitely be unbearable for them to go back and do the daily side quests. If there were no new disasters or big events, the players who were unwilling to be left out would definitely become big events. As their strength increased, they would definitely become more restless and wouldn't be satisfied with being leisurely, resulting in chaos. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind. Han Zhao looked deeply at the players' spaceships in the sky, turned around, and disappeared. On the other side, in the cabins of the players' spaceships, countless people were staring at the feedback of the ground competition from the satellite screen. The officers of the various guilds and clubs were also paying attention to the situation of the qualifiers, recording the dark horses and discussing softly. This year's competition is really top-notch. There are too many strong people. I don't think it's good. I've already seen more than 30 top-notch passers-by. If our team's players are really defeated by passers-by, it will be a huge loss of face. I really hope that the next version will come soon and open up a higher level. The guild plan can also be implemented. Many guild officers were secretly excited. As the level cap was unlocked further, the scale of the calamity grade players of the various guilds welcomed a wave of increase. They became an organization, and the operational strength of the guild organizations also increased. Now, many guilds had a large number of calamity grade players, and their strength was enough to occupy a place in the Galactic Society. In order to continue widening the gap between their professional players and ordinary players, many professional guilds had privately formulated detailed guild operations plans for the next version, deciding to expand in the universe in the next version. Although they were watching the Pro League, the thoughts of many guild officers had already drifted away. They could not wait to do something big in the next version. Han Zhao did not have the time to pay attention to the Players' Pro League. To him, this was only to adjust his mood. He buried himself in the machinery factory and almost abandoned all his chores, repeatedly checking the feasibility of the World Tree's information materialization function to break through the dark side universe. The days flew by during the research, and the three universal civilizations' cleansing of the Star Alliance gradually came to an end. They had already received the battle report made by Han Zhao from the upper echelons of the Star Alliance. They were speechless at Han Zhao's bad taste, and felt that this person was King ridiculous. However, the leaders of the three universal civilizations could not disturb Han Zhao, who was studying the plan to break the seal of the dark side universe, because of such a small matter. They could only pretend that nothing had happened and silently order people to destroy this dark history. In the blink of an eye, more than a year had passed. The three universal civilizations had more or less completed the dismantling and cleansing of the Star Alliance. They had digested most of the spoils of war and dismembered this enemy who was hiding in their beds. The Players' Fifth Pro League also came to an end during this period. This time, the Dynasty Club finally returned to first place and won the championship of the Fifth Pro League. Second Prince inherited King Admiral's position and led the team to win the championship. He instantly raised his position in history by a level and was hailed as the cornerstone of the next dynasty by the club. Dynasty was the only team to have won the championship twice in the 5 pro leagues. Their popularity, which had been declining slightly, soared like a rocket. The former Dynasty champion captain, King Admiral, who was the coach of the team, publicly congratulated Second Prince and expressed his gratification. Poor Bun called it the passing of the baton to the king, which was accepted by the players and spread widely on the forums. The second and third place of this year's competition were America's Devil Team and Russia's White Vodka Team. Although the Huaxia team was not as dominant as before and was unable to occupy two of the top three spots, their performance was still not bad. They had obtained excellent results in the individual competition, group competition, and other subsidiary competitions, and their presence was very strong. With the end of the Pro League, version 5 also came to the end, and it was time for the version update. In the player guild bases on the various planets of the Super's Holy Land, groups of players gathered there and waited to go offline. They chatted casually, and it was as noisy as a market. It's finally going to be updated again. I wonder how many years later it will be this time. The next version should be a major update. The level cap will be unlocked at least 20. Let's go. I wonder what will happen in the next version. Even a great enemy like the World Tree has been dealt with. I don't think anything can shake the current structure of the Galactic Society. Didn't you see the deduction of the galaxy times? There's a high chance that the internal conflicts will intensify. Black Star might turn evil and become a new boss, competing with the three universal civilizations for hegemony. Yo, does that mean we can finally start a massacre? Then I'm going to kill him until the world turns upside down. That's great. I've been unhappy with those 3 old B** stars for a long time. When the time comes, let me chop them up to vent my anger. You guys are so disappointing. Compared to this, shouldn't we be more concerned about whether the bug of not being able to go naked can be fixed in the next version? Yes. If we still can't go naked in the next version, I'll definitely complain. Hearing the players around her shouting, Maple Moon had a look of disdain. She felt that these people were hopeless. As they chatted, it was time to go offline. A large white light flashed, and groups of players disappeared one after another. The hall became empty. At the same time, in the private research room of the Super's Holy Land, Han Xiao, who was researching, paused and raised his head. Has the version update started again? Han Xiao stopped his work and opened the interface to take a look. The forum was closed again. This meant that the time flow of the dark side universe and the real universe was unbound again, becoming 2 independent systems again. He was the only one left with the stable information interference bridge. During this period of time, he had repeatedly studied the feasibility of the transformation plan. Now, he was more than 70% confident. Although he had contributed to it, it was more due to the testing and perfection of the previous dark side iterations. He was also standing on the shoulders of giants and making the final repairs to this plan. Han Xiao shook his head and closed the interface. Just as he was about to return to his research, Philip suddenly appeared. Master, Her Excellency Ames has come to your office. She wants to see you, Oh, I got it. I'll go over now. Han Xiao rubbed the space between his brows. He had no choice but to put down the research in his hands and turn around to go to the office. As soon as he entered, he saw Ames sitting in her seat with her back to the door. Hearing the sound, Ames turned her chair around. A pair of long legs stretched out from under the high slit of her black skirt. She sat with her legs crossed and stared at Han Xiao with a faint smile. It's not easy to see a busy person like you. I've been very busy recently. You know that. Han Xiao walked around the table and came to the back of the chair. He pressed his hands on both sides of Ames's forehead and gently rubbed it. Ames closed her eyes comfortably, but her mouth didn't stop. She chuckled and said, Yes, there's no time when you're not busy. If I didn't come to look for you occasionally, I would almost suspect that you had forgotten about me. What are you talking about? You're talking nonsense. You should be punished. Han Xiao curled his lips, and a weak electric current appeared on his finger, causing Ames's eyelashes to tremble. Ames tilted her head and dodged Han Xiao's finger. She slapped his hand away, turned around, and stood up. She put away her smile and said seriously, I don't understand. The World Tree has been dealt with, and the 3 universal civilizations have admitted defeat. We don't have any safety concerns now. Why are you still making yourself so busy? Where are you getting the pressure from? This is a secret. I can't tell you yet. In short, it's very troublesome. Han Xiao shook his head. It was useless to tell the beyond grade as about the secrets of the universe's iterations, so he did not reveal it to anyone other than the leaders of the three universal civilizations. Do you still remember what I said back then? Ambition is endless. When are you willing to stop? Do you really want to replace the three universal civilizations? Ames frowned. What exactly is it that you have to hide it so tightly? Can't you tell us and bear the burden together? You can't help. Han Xiao hesitated for a moment, raised his hand, and touched Ames' cheek. Feeling the smooth texture, he softly said, "Yes, this should be the last time. I'll let us all survive." Hearing this, Ames's eyes changed. Although she did not know what Han Xiao was hiding, she could hear the seriousness in Han Xiao's tone. Even a transcendent would find it troublesome, so it must be some kind of unimaginable predicament. Ames was about to chase after him when the communicator in the room suddenly rang. It was a message from Mar Bruce, and there was only one content. The Sanctum Exploration Team was finally back. Han Xiao's eyes lit up. "I have something to do, so I'll leave first. I'll accompany you next time." Han Xiao hurriedly changed into the king. Ames opened her mouth, wanted to say something, but the next moment, Han Xiao activated the teleportation and disappeared from the room in the blink of an eye. Looking at the empty room, Ames clenched and unclenched her fists. She repeated this a few times before taking a deep breath and suppressing the complicated emotions in her heart. The subordinate who had once needed her protection was now an existence she could only look up to. Until today, she felt that it was more and more difficult for her to keep up with Han Zhao's footsteps. Although Ames had a calm personality and rarely bothered about such things, after so many years, she would still care and feel disappointed. Even though Han Zhao's attitude toward her had always been the same, Ames knew that it was very difficult for her to share Han Zhao's worries. Chapter 1479. In a certain military forbidden area in the central galaxy, the location where the Sanctums had been summoned had been tightly sealed. There were dense space-armed fortresses and huge fleet armies scattered around, and the defense was tight. Suddenly, a ray of light lit up in the darkness, slowly spinning and expanding, turning into 3 Sanctum passageways that led to a white world. They floated quietly in space like 3 miniature white holes. In the dazzling light door, 3 black shadows gradually grew larger and slowly drove out. They were the spaceships of the 3 universal civilizations that had gone to explore the Sanctums. A group of soldiers immediately flew out of the military base and led the 3 spaceships back to the fortress. The members of the spaceships walked out under the guidance of their companions. Most of them looked dazed, as if their minds were in a daze. Their eyes were dull, and their reactions were slow. Only Claudia, Ulu, and the Beyond Grade as of the Arcane Church looked better, but there was still shock on their faces. At this moment, a glimmer flashed, and the remote projections of the 3 universal civilizations' rulers descended. They immediately surrounded them with nervous expressions. "How's the situation? Did you get the information in the Sanctums?" Claudia's eyes focused, and he was stunned for a few seconds before he seemed to react. With a serious expression, he nodded solemnly. "The scene in the Sanctums is exactly the same as what Blackstar said. We've already seen the records on the Sanctums message board. It's indeed the truth of the universe's iterations. In addition, we've also obtained some information about the past iterations from the Sanctums. Although it's not much, it's still proof." Hearing this, the 3 universal civilizations' rulers took a deep breath. Although they felt that Han Xiao was not lying, they were still shocked when this was confirmed. This time, Lewis suddenly lowered his voice and said, "Did the Sanctum Revival experiment succeed?" "It did." Claudia raised his palm and showed the Sanctum Revival mark on the back of his hand. It was exactly the same as in the records. Only then did the 3 of them completely relax and nod silently. In order to prove the authenticity of the Sanctums and prevent being tricked by Blackstar again, the 3 universal civilizations had deliberately taken out a few mediums of their deceased direct descendants and handed them to Claudia and the others to test if the Sanctum Revival was feasible. If they failed, it would mean that there was something fishy about the sanctum they had entered. Perhaps it was an alternate space deliberately built by Black Star just to fool them. If they succeeded, they would be able to prove that it was the real sanctum. Back then, when they asked Black Star to help revive the direct beyond grade, although the three universal civilizations rulers said that they would take out the media of all the deceased direct beyond grade, as they actually kept a small portion of the deceased direct beyond grade, claiming that they did not have the media of these people. This was to guard against Black Star and prevent accidents. Even when Black Star proved that the sanctum revival was reliable, the three universal civilizations did not reveal this. They planned to use it as a test material when they researched the sanctums in the future. Now it came in handy. Tap, tap, tap. At this moment, footsteps suddenly sounded from afar. Han Xiao, who had teleported over, strode over. Without waiting for anyone to speak, he grabbed Claudi's hand and raised it in front of his eyes. "What are you doing?" Claudi was shocked and subconsciously wanted to break free, but he realized that he could not move Han Xiao's 5 fingers at all. The three universal civilizations rulers thought that Han Xiao was concerned about the sanctum revival imprint, and their hearts tightened. They were worried that Black Star would hold a grudge against them for trying to revive the sanctum in private. However, they were wrong. At this point, Han Xiao would not pay attention to these details. He revealed his sanctum authority imprint, and Claudi's palm immediately responded, revealing his sanctum authority imprint. One of the two imprints was complicated and exquisite, while the other was simple and crude. This was the difference between full authority and level 1 authority. Seeing this, Han Xiao let go of Claudi and said, How does it feel to enter and leave the sanctum? Is it very hallucinatory?" Claudi rubbed his aching wrist and nodded hesitantly. "Indeed, I feel like I'm sleepwalking. Although I can still control my body, my perception seems to be separated by a layer. It's not like I can move as I wish under normal circumstances. It's more like I'm controlling my body from a third person's perspective. My brain and body are no longer one. It's your first time in, so it's normal to feel this way, although I've never experienced the feeling of having a low authority." Han Xiao patted him on the shoulder. "Your authority is too low, so you spent a lot of time. We've been waiting for you in the main universe for a long time." Hearing this, Claudi and the others looked at the time and were shocked. It had been a year or two since they set off, and they had only stayed in the sanctum for a few hours. Get used to it. When your authority is high, the flow of time in the sanctum will slowly converge with the main universe. Han Xiao explained casually before turning to look at the leaders of the three universal civilizations. "How is it? You guys got the information you wanted, right? Do you believe what I said now?" Bruce nodded calmly. "We've confirmed the truth about the universe's iterations. It's exactly as you said." This time, the ethereal Poe pondered and said, "It's just that our authority is too low and we can't see all the information on the sanctum's message board. Therefore, we still can't verify the secrets of the ultimate three universal civilizations and the dark side universe that you mentioned." Hearing this, Han Zhao's eyes widened, and he found it funny. "What? You guys don't want me to help you farm the sanctum's authority until you unlock all the information on the sanctum's message board, do you? If you don't mind, of course, we'd be honored. Get lost." "Ahem, we can understand if you're not willing." The three of them looked embarrassed. "It's true that I can help you complete the great deeds of several iterations, but don't push your luck." Han Xiao stood with his arms crossed and frowned. "I've already done enough for the Galactic Society. I've done my best, and I've already shown enough sincerity, but you guys are still skeptical of me. It was like this when we dealt with the World Tree, and it's still the same now. To be honest, if you guys still doubt me, then let's just go our separate ways." No. We just need to think about it, because this is a big matter. We don't doubt you. Let's go to the office and have a chat." The three of them quickly surrounded him and explained. They led the way and brought Han Xiao to a private conference room. After closing the door and confirming that there were no outsiders present, Bruce coughed and said, "Trust me, we believe in the intelligence of the dark side universe. Now that we've verified that the sanctum's intelligence is true, let's talk about the topic we didn't finish last time. How do you plan to break the seal of the dark side universe and let us return to the real universe? 2 ways. Han Xiao raised 2 fingers. Were they? The 3 of them perked up and listened carefully. Han Xiao paused for a moment before explaining slowly. The first is to follow the route of the 3 universal civilizations in the previous 2 dark side iterations and use the information materialization device normally. Although the world tree has undergone information mutation and changed its nature, and it has a lot of fancy functions, its essence has not changed. It still has the core function of the information materialization device, and I've already dug it out. What about the second one? The second one is to use the information materialization device, but it has to be combined with my virtual creation ability. The 3 of them looked at each other in confusion. Bruce said with a doubtful tone, "Aren't these 2 using the information materialization device? What's the difference?" The difference is my positioning. In the first plan, the success rate of the plan depends entirely on whether the information interference bridge meets the prerequisite requirements of the transformation, which means that this established route might still fail. As for the second plan, I can use my own ability. The principle is, I want to talk about the principle. You guys won't understand anyway. In short, I think it can increase the success rate of the transformation. The only concern is that the previous 2 dark side iterations have never tried my new method, so there might be some uncertainties. Han Xiao shook his head. The first plan was only to use him as a tool, a medium to activate the information materialization device. In the second plan, he was the executor of the plan. The difference between the 2 was who was the leader. After fusing with the world tree, Han Xiao studied it carefully and finally transformed his virtual creation skill. He removed the fake suffix, and the effect of the skill had a huge change. It was similar to the core function of the information materialization device and could resonate with it. The 3 of them hesitated and discussed softly. Han Xiao did not rush them. After a few minutes, Bruce raised his head and asked, "What's the estimated success rate of these 2 plans?" Han Xiao spread his hands. The first plan has a 50% success rate. The second plan, I estimate, has a 70% success rate, but the risks are unknown. Lewis pondered and said, "Why don't we try the first plan first? If it doesn't work, we could try the second one." It can, but the stable interference bridge might be damaged in the failure. By then, the dark side iteration won't have a chance to regret it. Therefore, I personally suggest that it's best to do in one go. Han Xiao shrugged. "We need to think about it again." "All right, you guys have plenty of time. However, the things that you need to prepare for the 2 plans are about the same. During this time, mobilize the Galactic Society and prepare." Okay. The 3 of them nodded and disconnected the remote projection. They could not wait to go back and discuss. Han Xiao was the only one left in the conference room. He looked at the spot where the 3 of them had disappeared and curled his lips. In fact, he had hidden a third plan, which was to use the world tree to swallow the entire universe and compress and pack it in his body, forming a complete and independent information collection. This way, it could reduce the difficulty of the information materialization. In his opinion, the success rate of this plan could exceed 80%. However, even if he used his chest muscles to think, he knew that the 3 universal civilizations would never agree to this plan. They would even start to doubt his motive for helping. In addition, this process was too long. God knew how long it would take for the world tree to swallow the entire dark side universe. Just the journey alone would take countless years. Because of the changes that might happen if he delayed, he did not want to adopt this plan. Therefore, Han Xiao did not say anything and hid it in his heart. I hope the 3 universal civilizations choose the second plan. But even if they don't choose the second plan, I'll do it. Han Xiao smacked his lips. Letting the 3 universal civilizations choose was mainly to give them a feeling of participation. When the Galactic Society was ready to officially start the transformation, it would be up to him. Chapter 1480. Han Xiao teleported back to the office on the main planet of the Super's Holy Land. The meeting with the heads of the three universal civilizations was much faster than expected, but Ames did not wait there. She had already left, and the room was empty. Where did she go? Her Excellency Ames went to look for Aurora. Do you want me to inform her to come over? No need. I'll take the initiative to look for her later. Han Xiao casually asked and did not ask further. His expression was not as relaxed as when he was talking to the heads of the three universal civilizations. Instead, he had a lot on his mind. He told the heads of the three universal civilizations that he was worried that the stable interference bridge would be damaged during the transformation. This was not a lie, but a real worry. After this period of testing, he realized that as a medium for the transformation, when he officially activated the information materialization device, he would suffer a large amount of information impact and temporarily establish a connection with the consciousness of the universe. During the reverse transformation to the true state, the interface, as a special product of the dark side universe, would gradually lose its effect. Therefore, the character summon card could not continue to function during the transformation process. If he wanted to maintain his consciousness and maintain the effect of virtual creation. True, he would have to strengthen his information foundation and add some information anchor points to prevent himself from being unable to hold on and causing the information interference channel to be disconnected. He did not reveal these details, and no one could help him. It would only add to his troubles. The so-called information anchor points should be my understanding of myself, my connection with the world tree, and my past memories, Han Xiao pondered. This was a rather mysterious perception. If he had not reached the transcendent grade, he would not have had such an intuition. Tracing back the past and remembering the past might be a way to deepen the information anchor points. The three universal civilizations are about to start preparing. I have to prepare too? Han Xiaoxin calmed down, changed into another set of king, and disappeared from the room again. Shattered star ring, blue star. The planet that had been abandoned for more than 10 years regained its prosperity after the people of Blue Star moved back. The old buildings that were covered by nature were demolished and rebuilt, and the entire planet was almost brand new. There was only one place that had not been renovated. The huge ruins had been covered by wild green vegetation, and a large number of building debris on the ground had rusted away. This was the ruins of the Germinal Organization. It lay quietly on the wasteland, silent as always. Only the traces left behind by time seemed to tell the story of the past. The three figures slowly walked around the ruins, stopping and observing from time to time. Back then, your godfather and I fought side by side and destroyed the Germinal Organization. He snuck in alone and stole a lot of confidential information. He even rescued the young Hela and Aurora. He fought for thousands of miles before he finally got the information. In the end, the war was decided and the Six Nations had nothing to worry about. They used a nuclear explosion to destroy the Germinal Organization, and Blue Star was reborn that day. Bennett caressed the remains of a huge metal plate. He wiped away the rust on it with his palm, revealing a blurry Germinal Organization imprint. His eyes could not help but reveal a complicated look of reminiscence, as if he was reminiscing about the era of war. Nero, who was standing behind him, took a few steps forward and placed his hand on the metal plate as well. I've seen these stories in textbooks, but every time I come to the ruins of the Germinal Organization, I always feel like I'm there. It's as if I've experienced a battle that changed the fate of this planet. Bennett turned to look at him, shook his head, and laughed. Thinking about it, Black Star was like a completely different person compared to him now. Sigh, when people get old, they love to reminisce about the past. You're not old yet, Mia, who was carrying a child, said with a smile. Bennett laughed heartily. He walked in front of Mia and bent down to look at the baby in Mia's arms. The baby was looking at him curiously with his big eyes. He chuckled and stretched out his two short hands. Yo, my good grandson, let Grandpa carry you. Bennett's face was full of kindness, and his arms that could easily crush steel carefully receive his grandson. He held him in his arms and shook him gently. Nero also came over with a face full of envy. Although he was the father of the child would cry nonstop whenever he hugged him. On the other hand, his son could only sleep peacefully in the arms of his grandfather, Bennett. After the war ended, Nero and Mia made a baby, which made Bennett very happy. Considering that Nero had become the acting army commander and that the Blue Star Federation was on the right track, Bennett thought about it and chose to step down from his position as the leader of the Blue Star Federation. Originally, many of the upper echelons did not agree and hoped that Bennett would be reelected. However, he had already made up his mind and was determined to step down. Now, he was no longer in charge of any position and was retiring to enjoy the happiness of his family. Bennett played with the baby for a while before looking at Nero and asking, "Have you tested his super genes?" "Yes, the report says that his super genes are extremely active, and it's rare. He might be an extremely talented Esper in the future." Nero was overjoyed. "Is that so? That's not bad either." Bennett nodded and stroked the baby's sparse hair. The three of them played with the baby and chatted happily as they slowly walked away. Suddenly, the space rippled, and Han Zhao's figure walked out. He stood on the spot and watched as Bennett and his grandchildren left happily. How beautiful! He then turned to look at the Germinal Organization ruins in front of him. Reminiscence appeared in his eyes as well. He had already walked a very long path, but when he looked back, his past on this planet seemed to be right in front of him, as if it was just yesterday. The memories that had been sealed away surged like a tide, and scenes flashed before his eyes one after another. The half a year of darkness he had spent in the Germinal Organization's base after transmigrating to this world, driving an off-road vehicle under the moonlight after escaping with much difficulty, leaving Star Dragon and transforming in a Black Phantom to walk alone in the wasteland, infiltrating the Germinal Organization to steal information and being hunted down for thousands of miles, turning the Germinal Organization headquarters into ashes in a dazzling nuclear explosion. Similarly, the figures of people flashed before his eyes one after another. The young Hela, who was determined to jump into the abyss, but was eventually pulled back by him. The young Aurora, who was still optimistic despite being tortured. The young Bennett, who worked tirelessly to end the war. The Germinal Organization leader, who was at the end of the road, but did not turn back. The tragedy of the subsequent mutation disaster also appeared before his eyes. The chaotic world, the crazy people, the endless beast hordes, the spaceships that fell from the sky, the blazing and fierce ship cannons. The source of everything was the Dark Star and finally the Dark Star. Two full versions of the disaster. This place is really full of misfortune and misfortune. Han Zhao closed his eyes slightly as the version of the plot flowed through his mind. After a long time, he opened his eyes and felt that his mind was calm. There seemed to be some subtle changes in his body. Somehow, his information foundation seemed to have become stronger, and he seemed to have set the first information anchor point to connect to Blue Star. Blue Star. Han Zhao slowly rose into the sky, looked down at the Germinal Organization ruins, and then looked at the bustling city at the end of the horizon. He gently turned around and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1481. The dark and deep space of the universe was like a curtain decorated with stars and diamonds. A silver-white planet was quietly rotating in it. The surface of the planet was made of metal, and there were mechanical towers with distinct edges and corners. They were connected to each other through the air, forming matrix-like patterns. The neat layout revealed an exquisite mechanical beauty. This was the new main planet of Han Zhao's mechanical life civilization. It was located in the territory of the Super's Holy Land and was completely created by mechanical life. The planet was very large and had merged with the material of several planets. The former planet Apostle had also been decomposed and merged with this planet. Originally, Psionic Prime and the other mechanical oracles wanted to name this new main planet Black Star Planet to show their respect to Black Star, but Han Zhao firmly rejected it. In the end, Psionic Prime and the other oracles changed their minds and named this planet Saint Planet. On the bustling alloy road, mechanical life, forms of all sizes and shapes were bustling. Some people's feet made clanging sounds when they walked, some people's tires rubbed against the ground, some people's engine cylinders kept rumbling, and some people's exhaust pipes kept spewing out gas from time to time, forming a strange tune with a strong mechanical feeling. Han Xiao walked among the machines. His entire body was covered in a camouflage coating. From the outside, he looked like an ordinary mechanical life form. All the mechanical life forms that approached him could not detect his existence. This place is becoming more and more prosperous. Han Xiao was secretly relieved. After taking in the world tree, he no longer needed the mechanical civilization to produce mechanical soldiers all day long. Thus, he stopped the order to increase the number of soldiers and let the mechanical civilization reproduce and develop on its own. This was the first time he had carefully observed the changes in the mechanical civilization after the war. Han Xiao did not walk fast, as if he was taking a slow stroll. His eyes kept looking left and right, sizing up the machines on the street. Although mechanical life forms were produced in batches and many people should have the same model, there was almost no mechanical life form on the street that was exactly the same. Even mechanical life forms of the same model had added all kinds of personalized structures to themselves through self-modification and were even equipped with colorful paint. Some like guns, some like sharp blades, some like heavy armor, and some like to run naked. From the perspective of a normal life form, this was like the difference in clothes, hairstyles, makeup, and accessories. In the shops on the street, Han Xiao also saw all kinds of products. Most of them were modification shops and parts shopping malls. There were all kinds of mechanical parts, and they were even painted in different colors. There was a huge flow of customers, and mechanical life forms were entering and leaving every moment, trying on clothes. In addition, he also saw a special snack bar. The chef robots inside cooked oil, lubricating maintenance gels, energy blocks, and other items. They put them in a big pot and stir them vigorously to make all kinds of strange food. Han Xiao took one and tasted it. It was so bad that it almost broke his defense. However, the other mechanical life forms that came to buy left satisfied and ate happily. In their eyes, this was a rare delicacy. There were also a few couples of mechanical life forms feeding each other. Han Xiao also saw a sensory stimulation shop. To mechanical life forms, it was an entertainment venue. There were devices connected inside, directly simulating all kinds of senses and emotions, bringing a strong sense of stimulation to the smart core. After paying a large sum of money, they could also directly upgrade their emotional module through the host computer of the shop. In the side alley, Han Xiao also saw a few small robots scribbling on the alloy wall. Seeing that someone was coming, they quickly dispersed, stepping on the electromagnetic wheels and flying away close to the wall like a group of rebellious street kids. The graffiti on the wall was extremely wild, filled with a large number of distorted bright colors. The outline could vaguely be seen to be the portrait of the supreme heavenly venerate. In the originally cold and strict mechanical group, there was a strong individuality. The culture of freedom was popular, and Han Xiao saw the smoke and fire in this group of mechanical life forms. The lives of mechanical life forms are quite similar, Han Xiao smiled. All this time, he had mainly treated the mechanical civilization as an arsenal and did not pay much attention to the changes in the mechanical civilization's life. It was not until he let the mechanical civilization reproduce freely that he faced the budding cultural trend. As an artisan, he could guide the direction of the mechanical civilization's culture, but he did not do so and let it take shape naturally. Only now did he feel that the mechanical civilization was a little civilized. As he walked, Han Xiao found that he had come to a huge mechanical square. In the middle of the square stood two statues, both of which were himself. One was him in his normal state, and the other was his mechanical body in the supreme heavenly venerate state. The mechanical life forms in the square flowed endlessly. No one deliberately worshipped the statues. At most, they would occasionally stop and look up for a while before walking away and continuing their lives. Their respect for Han Xiao was no longer formal, but placed in their hearts. Han Xiao came to the foot of the statue and stopped to look up. Suddenly, from the corner of his eyes, he saw a tall mechanical life form carrying a small mechanical body of a similar model walked past him. He turned his head and looked. This seemed to be a happy father and son. The father let the child ride on his neck and kept teasing him. Han Xiao watched this scene silently, and the scenes of the mechanical civilization following him for the past few decades appeared in his mind. Countless mechanical lives walked onto the battlefield under his orders and were used as cannon fodder. Countless unique sparks of consciousness that were born in the circuit of the chip disappeared in the cold universe with the broken mechanical body. Although he treated mechanical lives as tools, due to the restrictions of the underlying logic, they did not have any complaints. They silently buried their hobbies and interests, risking their lives to fight for him, and still respected him, the creator. I don't need you to risk your lives for me in the future. Enjoy your new life. Han Xiao shook his head gently. He would not cancel the underlying logic of the mechanical civilization respecting him, but he did not plan to order the mechanical civilization to fight anymore. He had already grasped the world tree and virtual creation true, so he did not need these mechanical lives to work for him. He took one last look at his statue, and the memories in his heart flowed. He felt that another information anchor point had been set up, so he turned around and disappeared into the lively fleet. In the Super's Holy Land, the new headquarters of the Black Star Corps, Han Xiao strolled around the base and concealed himself. No one noticed his existence. The huge base was very lively. Countless members of the Black Star Corps were working here. People came and went, and from time to time, people would brush past Han Xiao while chatting. He walked around slowly and came to the area where the upper echelons were active. He saw Haluz working at his desk, Sylvia, who was still working hard to break through to beyond grade, Aroshia, who was staring at the starry sky outside the window in a daze, Loggy, who was slacking, and Reynold, who had maintained the operations of the logistics department for decades. Looking at the Black Star Corps, Han Xiao was a little dazed. The difficult memories of when he first started his business surfaced. He remembered that he had just entered the galaxy and was still a country bumpkin from a surface civilization. He was poor, and the only thing he could rely on was the guns in his hands. These old companions had followed him to build his current foundation and grew to this point with a third-rate mercenary group. Everything seemed to have happened yesterday, and his memories were still clear. The scene of Haluz, Aroshia, Sylvia, and the others following him as mercenaries appeared in his mind. At that time, everyone was very young and fought with their lives on the line. Now that nearly 100 years had passed, everyone had become big shots in the galaxy and no longer needed to do it personally. They had already succeeded and had a different life. Thinking back, Han Xiao could not help but sigh. Including himself, everyone had more or less changed their appearance from back then. Perhaps they all missed their past selves even more. The beginning was always the freshest, and in the future, they would always hate each other. As their careers progressed, their views changed easily. It made him feel like if only life was like the first time we met. However, although he was emotional, he still preferred the spiral development of things, allowing the road ahead to continue extending and ushering in all kinds of changes. The memories of the rise and expansion of the Black Star Corps flashed in Han Xiao's mind. In a daze, he felt another information anchor point being formed. He nodded and disappeared. At the same time, Haluz, Sylvia, Loggy, and the others who were doing their own things suddenly had a thought. For some reason, Han Xiao's figure suddenly appeared in their minds and could not be erased. They subconsciously thought of the dusty memories of when they first fought with Han Xiao. They stopped what they were doing and remained silent. Their emotions were complicated. What's wrong with me? Why do I suddenly miss the Black Star of the past so much? In a chapter. Chapter 1482. Holy Covenant Headquarters. Han Xiao teleported over. Under everyone's unsurprised gazes, he walked through the complicated corridors and arrived at Destiny's Child's confinement room. Destiny's Child, who was soaking in the solution, woke up. He happily approached and placed his hand on the inner wall of the container. Han Xiao smiled and placed his palm on it through the container. At this moment, a researcher walked over and asked curiously, "Your Excellency Black Star, what orders do you have for us this time?" "Release Destiny's Child." Han Xiao pouted. The researcher was stunned and said uncertainly, "You're not joking, right? If we release it, it'll be very difficult to catch it in the future." "Release it." Han Xiao shook his head. "Heir, although you're also the leader of Holy Covenant, it's best to let His Excellency Baiger give the order personally. It's fine. I've already told him." Han Xiao showed Baiger's information and patted the researcher's shoulder. "Then I understand." The researcher did not understand, but still did as he was told. He stopped the operation of the information stabilization device and put away the container, removing all restrictions on Destiny's Child. Destiny's Child was finally exposed to the outside world, but did not immediately enter the high-dimensional information form to escape. Instead, it floated beside Han Xiao and circled around curiously, as if surprised by why it was released. "You've helped me a lot. I believe freedom is a good reward." Han Xiao smiled and raised his palm to show the Destiny's Child imprint on the back of his hand. "Also, we're already in contact. I hope you could do me one last favor." Destiny's Child understood what Han Xiao meant. It nodded slightly, and its body slowly blurred. It entered the high-dimensional information form and disappeared without a trace. Will there really be no problem like this? If we don't control Destiny's Child, it'll give birth to many more children if there's another information form disturbance. The researcher could not help but say, "It's fine. That's what I hope for." Han Xiao waved his hand. He had formed an imprint connection with Destiny's Child, and his consciousness could communicate at any time. He hoped to use the information connection between Destiny's Child and the many subbodies to form a large net and form a new information anchor point. In addition, he suspected that the composition of Destiny's Child was not simple. Since he entered the dark side universe, he often seemed to have indirect entanglements with Destiny's Child. He had a feeling that perhaps Destiny's Child was not simply a primal Esper ability entity. If my guess is correct, Destiny's Child's special ability mechanism might have a special connection with the dark side universe's pan-consciousness. It might even be one of the unconscious incarnations of the dark side universe's pan-consciousness. Han Xiao muttered to himself, put on the king, and disappeared without a trace. A day later, in the high-level meeting room of the Super's Holy Land's main planet, there were more than a dozen beyond grade, as with different positions sitting in the room. Aurora sat in the main seat, maintaining the posture of a mature sister. Her long hair was tied up, and her slightly round and delicate face tried her best to maintain a serious expression. Her entire person exuded a capable aura. "I've reviewed the recent reports, and I found that the results of your work have not reached the expected goals of the previous quarter. Although the Super's Holy Land's position is stable now, we're only an organization that has been established for a few years. It's not the time to be lazy. I hope that everyone will take the position in your hands more seriously." Aurora had a straight face and a solemn tone as she criticized the dozen or so people present. This meeting had been going on for a while. She had taken the initiative to call this small meeting to spur some of the upper echelons so that they would not slack off too much. Black Star had not been in charge of things recently, and Aurora had been acting as the acting leader for a long time. Now, she had also established some prestige. The dozen or so people present also gave her face and silently took the criticism without smiling. After talking for a while, Aurora finally stopped talking. She slowed down and said, "All right, that's all for today. I hope everyone can go back and supervise your respective departments and convey my intentions." Meeting adjourned. Everyone nodded, stood up, and left the room. Only then did Aurora relax her body and no longer maintain her shrewd and capable posture. She complained about Han Xiao being a hands-off boss and turned to leave through another door. It was not until everyone left that Han Xiao's virtual figure appeared in the room. He looked in the direction where Aurora had left and smiled. Although Aurora liked to pretend to be young in front of him, in reality, the two of them were about the same age. Han Xiao was quite happy to see Aurora taking charge. Now, she more or less had the aura of a leader and no longer needed others to shield her from the wind and rain. She's no longer the little girl who needed to be protected. Han Xiao shook his head and smiled. He walked around. A weak singing voice suddenly sounded. Han Xiaoxin's heart moved. He followed the voice and came to the floating roof at the top. He saw Fu Ding holding Chun Xing's hand. The two of them were on a date here. They were inseparable like glue. The soul swapper had already separated their souls, but the experience of coexisting as one allowed them to know each other's character very well, even if they were separated. They could guess what the other party was thinking with just a look or a movement. There was no wall of heart that could not be understood. There was only a tacit understanding between them, like soulmates. Han Xiao still remembered the reason why Fu Ding and Chun Xing coexisted as one. It was like a meeting of fate, and in the end, it became the puzzle of each other's lives. His life had been smooth all these years, and it was also because of Fu Ding's good luck. He had a small part of his military medal. TSK, a winner in life with a wife. Han Xiao looked from afar and did not disturb the two of them. He quietly left the rooftop. He could not help but think of Hela. Speaking of which, he and Hela seemed to have met by fate. On the first day he came to the dark side universe, he had become friends with Hela. Back then, they were still enemies. He did not expect them to support each other and walk side by side until today. With a thought, Han Xiaoxin arrived at Hela's residence. She built the house directly next to the advanced cultivation room. Even though it was peaceful now, she did not slack off on her training. At this time, Hela had just finished a round of training and did not continue to stay in the training room. She returned to the room. A strange-looking skeleton beast pounced on her and rubbed against her leg, like a dog or a cat. Hela's face, which had always been indifferent, showed a doting smile. She bent down and picked up the skeleton beast, stroking its smooth white bones. The little beast stretched out comfortably in her arms. Han Xiao tilted his head and was a little surprised. It was the first time he found out that Hela had a pet today. Although this pet looked a little scary to him, in the eyes of Hela, who controlled the power of death, this skeleton beast was probably quite cute. There was a huge difference in aesthetics. Looking at Hela playing with the pet slowly, Han Xiaoxin's expression was a little subtle. Raising a pet doesn't seem like something she would do. In his eyes, Hela's personality had always been strong and cold. She pursued greater strength and would not waste energy on unnecessary things. Now, she had a hobby. But having a hobby was more like a normal person. This is good too. She's finally found some fun in life. Han Xiao turned around and left silently. He strolled around the Super's holy land and peeped into the lives of the various Beyond Grade as. He saw that the Beyond Grade as no longer needed to fight with others and were focused on their careers, contributing to the Super's holy land together. It was as if most people had found the long-lost peace and tranquility. Very soon, Han Xiao arrived at the business department and saw that the atmosphere here was extremely positive. In the office, groups of executives were lining up to receive Sorokin's instructions. He took a closer look and saw that Sorokin's entire body was emitting a faint light. He was in the state of a hero spirit revival. His face was in high spirits, and he was in high spirits as he arranged the business plan in an orderly manner. Under Sorokin's leadership, the economy of the Super's Holy Land had been booming in the past few years, and its results were astonishing. Sorokin seemed to have found a second spring in his career and found a stage to showcase his strengths. He was not tired of it. Not long after, Han Xiao walked past all the departments and finally arrived at the Pantheon Square. There were statues of all the Beyond Grades here. His gaze swept across the statues of everyone, and the twists and turns he had experienced with the Beyond Grade as over the past few decades appeared in his mind. With the efforts of himself and some peak Beyond Grade, as the Beyond Grade as had changed from a plate of loose sand to a close collection of interests. The establishment of the Super's Holy Land gave everyone something to rely on and witness the results of their decades of hard work. Although there was some hostility between them, in the end, the hundreds of statues in front of him represented the various Beyond Grade as who had fought side by side with him for decades. They could be considered comrades who had carried guns together. We can be considered partners. Han Xiao closed his eyes slightly. He could vaguely feel the formation of a new information anchor point, so he turned around and left. At the same time, all the beyond grade, as in the Super's Holy Land, suddenly felt something and raised their heads to look in the direction where Han Xiao had disappeared. Half a day later, Han Xiao, an uninvited guest, arrived at the mechanical race territory. The mechanical race was no stranger to Han Xiao. They had once had a grudge with him, so they welcomed him. A young mechanic came out to receive him and brought Han Xiao to the guest room. "Your Excellency Black Star, may I ask why you're here?" As soon as he sat down, the young mechanic asked curiously. "I want to meet Manison this time and catch up with him." Han Xiao smiled. Among his many beyond grade A comrades, Manison was the most special one to him. The two of them had loved and killed each other for decades, and he had inherited many of the other party's abilities. Therefore, in Han Xiaoxin's eyes, Manison had a different position and was equivalent to half a teacher. He felt that Manison might be able to bring him a new information anchor point, so he came to visit. However, the young mechanic shook his head and rejected his request. "I'm sorry, Your Excellency Black Star. His Excellency, the Mecha Empire, is going into seclusion for a long time and will not see all visitors." "Me too. Teacher has instructed, especially you." The young mechanic replied carefully. "Yeah, this guy really doesn't hide it at all. I thought our relationship had eased a lot." Han Xiao was helpless. He then looked at the young man in front of him curiously and asked, "You're Manison's student? What's your name? Allow me to formally introduce myself. I'm a new student that teacher accepted 2 years ago. My name is Marigo Morgan, and I'm temporarily managing the affairs of the mechanical race for him. Greetings, Your Excellency Black Star." This person nodded politely. He actually accepted a new student, and he didn't even inform me. Han Xiao clicked his tongue in wonder, seeing that Manison was unwilling to talk about the past. Although Han Xiao felt that it was a pity, he did not dwell on it and expressed his intention to leave. Arriving at the platform of the spaceport, Han Xiao was about to board the spaceship and leave when he suddenly realized that a new information anchor point had been created. He looked back at the depths of the mechanical race's territory, smiled, and closed the hatch. He then activated the spaceship and entered the galaxy. At the same time, in the depths of the mechanical race, Manison, who was in seclusion researching technology, raised his head and looked in the direction of Han Xiao's departure through the wall. He did not say much and lowered his head to continue his research. He only muttered a few words under his breath. "Humph, annoying guy." Chapter 1483. Ancient Star Desert, a dead planet. A green moonlight hung in the sky, and the cracked black earth was silent since ancient times. Not a single blade of grass grew on it, and there was not a single bit of greenery. Occasionally, some broken building debris could be seen in the ground, and the parts that were exposed were mottled with traces of wind erosion. The exquisite carvings were already blurred, and there were also broken statues planted on the ground. Some only had half a head left, and some only had half a body left. This area seemed to be the ruins of an abandoned city that had been buried by time. A small spaceship hovered 1 meter above the ground, emitting a light blue field that covered dozens of kilometers, providing long-range energy transmission and life support functions. The spaceship's appearance was narrow at the front and wide at the back, and it was triangular in shape. It was silver and gold, and the emblems of the Super's Holy Land, Black Star Core, and Floating Dragon Island were engraved on the outer armor. This was a special high-end spaceship that had not been mass-produced by the Army's logistics department. It was equipped with all kinds of cutting-edge technology and could break through the 5th gear warp speed limit, reaching level 17. It was not cheap to build. At this very moment, about 500 meters below the spaceship's pyrolite domain, 2 figures were slowly trekking through an underground, maze-like ruin. This is the ruins of the capital of the 5th dynasty of Terran, and it is also the last light of the Terran people. Their civilization self-destructed at the end of the exploration era. Later, scavengers dug up some antiques, and the ruins of this civilization saw the light of day again. Speaking of which, they were also unlucky. They didn't expect that their home planet, which they relied on for survival, was once the hibernation of a group of interstellar beasts countless years ago. The awakening of the ancient beasts brought disaster to their civilization. Harrison caressed the blurry reliefs on the walls of the underground palace as he spoke. Jenny listened with great interest as she hugged her child. Her eyes sparkled with interest. Jenny had already given birth to the child and rested on floating Dragon Island for a few months. Harrison's desire for adventure had increased, and Jenny could not stay idle either. The two of them hit it off and used their connections to get a cutting-edge spaceship from the Army's logistics department for free to play and explore. Because of the child, so it was not suitable to go to places that were too dangerous. Therefore, Harrison decided to bring Jenny to archaeology and specially join the Space-Time Research Society for this. Read a large number of books of lost civilizations. He was determined to be a good tour guide. The three of them were now wearing the new generation of space exploration mechas produced by the Army. Could they withstand all kinds of extreme environments? The child's mecha was even more custom-made. It also had a series of functions such as mental stability, sleeping, automatic diaper changing, and so on. Harrison stopped in front of a row of broken statues. He reached out and pointed. He smiled and said, "This is the underground palace that the last King Teslund built for the previous kings when he was young. In the eyes of ordinary people, he built it to commemorate the previous kings. He built this underground palace. In fact, it was to cover up a natural passage that went deep into the ground. There was a young ancient beast living in it. He wanted to tame it secretly and use this kind of power that was out of the norm to break the regent's restraint on his power." It sounded very boring, right? It was another boring political struggle in the palace. But what happened next? You wouldn't have thought of it. He accidentally awakened more ancient beasts and caused the destruction of the civilization. Jenny was curious. You guessed wrong. Did he awaken this ancient beast, but fell in love with it? Was it because of the ancient beast's special genes? The closer the last King Teslund was to the ancient beast, the more mutated his bloodline became. In the end, he transformed into a new ancient beast during the court meeting and personally led the ancient beast to destroy the capital. Is this a love that transcends species? Or is it a spiritual hint from the ancient beasts? Jenny's eyes widened. Although interstellar love was common, it was still quite impactful to hear about it. That's not clear. Only the person involved knows. Harrison shook his head. Then what happened next? Well, after that, the sleeping ancient beasts woke up one after another and escaped into space. The last King Teslund's whereabouts are unknown. Some say that he disappeared into space with the ancient beasts, while others say that he left behind the ruins of his mother planet with his partner, forever running freely in this dead land. Sounds quite romantic. Jenny was a little unsatisfied. Who knows? We might even find their corpses here. That's also the goal of our exploration this time. Harrison laughed out loud. The two of them chatted casually as they went deeper. Most of the time, it was Harrison talking and Jenny listening. Not long later, they finally reached the end of the underground palace. There was a passage blocked by rocks here. Harrison smashed the barrier with a punch, revealing a broken staircase that led downwards. He walked in with Jenny for a long time before reaching the end. It was a cavern-like space. The skeletons of two beasts were hugging each other as if they had died in each other's arms. Could this be the last king of Teslund and his partner? Jenny was curious. I think so. Looks like they decided to stay here and accompany each other in eternal sleep. Harrison's eyes sparkled. He took a series of videos before picking up a few bones and putting them away, planning to bring them back for research. However, at this moment, the ground suddenly shook. The two of them felt the cave shaking, and the magnitude was gradually increasing. Soon, the ground was shaking. Rumble. The sound of the earth veins moving could be faintly heard. It was getting louder and louder, as if the earth was roaring. It's going to collapse? Harrison shuddered and immediately flew back the way they came with Jenny at an extremely fast speed. However, halfway through, the entire underground palace suddenly collapsed. Rumble. Countless rocks fell, filling up all the gaps. Looking down from above, the ground instantly collapsed, turning into a huge crater. However, right at this moment, a force field with a faint green glow suddenly descended from the starry sky, tearing apart the surface of the earth and digging up the rocks. Under the guidance of the force field, a round earth ball broke out of the ground and flew for a distance before finally landing beside the spaceship. The dirt ball trembled, and the dirt and rocks on it fell off, revealing a round blue shield. Harrison and the other two's armor sensed the impact from the outside and automatically activated the shield. This small incident could not cause any damage to them, and the three of them were unscathed. At this moment, Ames, who was wearing a black dress, landed from the sky and floated in front of the three of them. She had a helpless look on her face as she said unhappily, "How could you be so careless? I saw you guys buried alive as soon as I came. Since you brought the child, don't go to such a dangerous place." Cough, cough. It was an accident. Harrison was embarrassed. Although they would not be injured in the collapse, it would still take some time for them to climb out. He did not expect Ames to see them, which made him feel very embarrassed. Jenny did not have much of a reaction. She had been running outside with Harrison for more than a year and had been buried alive 7 or 8 times. She was already used to it since she would not be injured. With extraordinary power, her definition of danger was definitely different from ordinary people. Jenny was not afraid of taking a small risk with the child. She asked curiously, "Sis, how did you find us?" As soon as she said that, Philip suddenly appeared, sat on Ames' shoulder, and gave her a thumbs up. "Of course, it's my credit. I can locate all the spaceships that the Army sends out. All right, I almost forgot that Black Star gave you the authority to mobilize the Army's artificial intelligence. Then, why did you come and find us personally? Can't you say anything through the comms? Why did you disturb our two-person world?" Jenny pouted. Ames turned to look at the sleeping child in Jenny's arms, and a gentle smile appeared on her face. "I miss my nephew. Can't I come to see him? Quick, let me play with the child." "Don't even think about it. Don't you know how heavy your hands are? Every time I give him to you, you don't know how to cherish him at all. You don't care if he's not your child, right?" Jenny immediately objected firmly. She turned to the side and protected the child in her arms. However, Ames did not listen to her. Ignoring her objections, she casually controlled the force field and took the child from her arms. Then, she turned on the mechanical suit and used her fingers to pinch the child's chubby cheeks, waking the child up instantly. The child started crying. "Hey, be gentler." Jenny grabbed Ames' arm and shouted at Harrison, "What are you still standing there for? Come and help." Harrison stood at the side with a bitter smile. The sisters were fighting, so how would he dare to go up and help them? "What do you know? I'm using my strength to help him clear his body and build a good physical foundation for him." Ames ignored Jenny and kept rubbing the child's cheeks. However, although she controlled her strength, she did not have much parenting knowledge and still made the child cry nonstop. Jenny was no match for Ames' strength. She panted at the side and could only come over to coax the child. Finally, the baby calmed down. "Don't you not like children? Why are you always pestering me? I didn't like them before, but it doesn't mean I don't like them now." Ames did not even turn her head and continued to play with the child. Finally, the child started to giggle. Jenny said unhappily, "If you like them, then give birth to one yourself. Why do you always play with my child? What's the point? Don't you have one here?" Ames blinked. Jenny's mouth twitched. Sometimes, she really could not stand Ames's willful and unrestrained style. She was speechless for a while and suddenly asked curiously, "Speaking of which, have you thought about it? Do you want to have a child with Black Star? He's mentioned it more than once, but you haven't responded to him." "I haven't thought about it yet. Let's think about it again." Ames was a little hesitant. "My good sister, how long have you been thinking about it?" Jenny was speechless. "Although you have a long lifespan, there has to be a result. It's just that Black Star spoils you. Otherwise, if it were anyone else, I'm afraid they would have even created a clan at this age. Upon hearing that, Ames glanced at her and clicked her tongue in wonder. Weren't you always unwilling for me to accept Black Star? Why are you urging me to have children with him now? Jenny curled her lips and did not speak. In the past, she was indeed unhappy that Han Xiao and Ames were together, but now that she even had a child, she could not wait for Han Xiao to make Ames unable to get out of bed every day so that she could give birth to a happy child. That way, she and the child would not be harassed by Ames. Buzz. At that moment, the space fluctuated slightly, and Han Xiao stepped out of nothingness and teleported over. Why are you here too? Ames looked over and was a little surprised. You borrowed Philip's authority, so of course I received the news. Han Xiao shrugged. Then why are you here? Ames narrowed her eyes and said in an inexplicable tone. She still remembered what happened last time and was a little emotional. I'm done with my business for the time being, so I came to accompany you. Han Xiao smiled. Do you think I need you to accompany me now? Ames raised Jenny's child in her hand and snorted softly. Han Xiao looked down at the child and saw Jenny give him a look. He immediately strode forward, picked up the child's clothes, and put him in Jenny's hand. He smiled and said, Since you like children so much, let's have one too. You're doing it again? Ames's eyes wandered. Didn't I reject you before? Han Xiao hugged Ames's waist as if there was no one else around. He chuckled and said, I'll ask you how many times you reject me until you agree. Humph, shameless. I thought a big shot like you wouldn't be obsessed with having children. I didn't expect you to be so vulgar. Ames didn't break free from Han Xiao's embrace. She only placed her hands on Han Xiao's chest and leaned back slightly to prevent him from coming closer. Han Xiao pondered for a few seconds before speaking in a low voice from the bottom of his heart. The world is full of ups and downs. No matter who we are, we need something to anchor our existence, be it ideals, beliefs, or feelings. I've already made the choice to let everything enter a new era and make us unique existences. There won't be a cycle of reinforcements, so I don't know what the future will be like. I just hope that I have one more thing to rely on in this world so that I can never forget you. Yo, how rare. You actually know how to coax me. Don't you remember me well enough? Isn't it better if it's deeper? Are you flirting with me? Of course. What do you think my hands are doing? The two of them had been intimate countless times and were not shy at all. As they exchanged glances, their words became more and more explicit. Seeing that the situation was not good, Harrison and Jenny had already secretly boarded the spaceship. They hurriedly started the engine, and the thrusters spewed out flames as they quickly took off and fled. Very soon, the spaceship left outer space, and the planet was getting further and further away. However, before Harrison could catch his breath, the planet behind him suddenly shook violently. The surface of the planet shattered, and a huge crater that could be seen from outer space was blasted out. The shock wave swept out, sending countless stones and sand flying as if it had been hit by an unbearable impact. Immediately after, the planet seemed to have suffered continuous, invisible attacks. The surface of the planet caved in, and the entire crust shattered like an eggshell. All the material collapsed toward the center, and the surface became riddled with holes. Blazing red lava gushed out from them. These 2B* stars really treat us as if we don't exist. Jenny was angry and excited. She was so excited that she wanted to see the world burn. Her face was red as she cheered them on in her heart, wishing that the two of them could use more strength. However, the next moment, a blinding light burst out, and the planet exploded. Boom! The intense energy current spread out and caught up to the tail of the spaceship. It even broke the protective shield and sent the spaceship flying. It spun in space and flew out. After a while, the spaceship stabilized itself. Harrison wiped his cold sweat and looked back at the apocalyptic scene of the planet exploding. He swallowed quietly with a complicated expression. Luckily, we ran fast enough. It's a pity that these ruins are gone. Chapter 1484. A few days later, on a residential planet in the ancient star desert. This woman. Han Xiao walked on the bustling streets, passing through the bustling crowd. He turned on his stealth function and was not discovered by the passers-by. From time to time, he would rub his waist and mutter softly. It was not easy for him to appease Ames and leave behind an information anchor point. In the end, he was able to leave the scene of the crime and go to another city planet. He planned to take a walk and find a new information anchor point. I already have quite a number of information anchor points on me. I can feel that my information foundation is much stronger, but I keep feeling that I'm still lacking something. Han Xiao looked around and muttered to himself. After walking for a while, he suddenly stopped and looked ahead. Not far ahead was a physical Wayne card store. There was a sea of people at the entrance, and there was a long queue. Beside them was a poster of his extraordinary heroism. On the notice board was the business activity. Today was the release day of the Black Star Collector's Edition card set. In front of the store, a shop assistant was shouting. There are a total of 24 Black Star Collector's Edition card set, including cards from different periods of Black Star. There are also 13 new cards, all of which are equipped with holographic special effects. Appearance, attack, defense, activation of special effects, and other actions have different holographic images. The collection value is extremely high, and it is a new product that Wayne card enthusiasts must not miss. There are only 8,000 sets in our store, and each person can only buy 2 sets at most. It is a limited release. The long line of people in front of the store rubbed their fists and wiped their palms. Their faces were filled with impatience, like a group of lively leeks waiting to be cut. Did you make a solo card set for me? Han Xiao blinked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Although the Wayne cards included most of the famous big shots in the galaxy, there were only a few who had a single card series. From this, it could be seen how popular he was in the Galactic Society. Speaking of which, should he increase the usage fee for his portrait this year? At this moment, Han Xiao's intuition suddenly throbbed. He sensed a new information anchor point, and his expression changed slightly. Wait a minute, could the Wayne card also be an information anchor point? He quickly narrowed his eyes and sensed it before heaving a sigh of relief. The next moment, he opened his virtual vision and instantly covered the entire planet. The lives of the galactic residents jumped into his eyes. Han Xiao saw it. Some people put up posters of him at home, and some people bought figurines of him. Someone is watching a movie based on me. Galactic residents related to me? They were marked in his field of vision and lit up one after another. This information anchor point? From the Galactic Society itself. Han Xiaoxin's expression flickered. Did he bring countless changes to the Galactic Society and deviate from the trajectory of his previous life? These are all traces of my past, the changes I made to this world. All of them were information anchor points. After experiencing all kinds of storms, the Galactic Society finally had a long-awaited peace. Behind the peaceful and happy lives of every galactic resident, there was their own shadow, the respect and memories that everyone in the Galactic Society had for him. It was the biggest information anchor point. As the galactic residents lit up in his virtual vision one by one, Han Xiao felt that this information anchor point was being strengthened, and his information foundation was becoming more and more solid. Han Xiao's eyes flashed as he understood. Perhaps this was the most important information anchor point, witnessing the changes he had made to this world with his own eyes. Look at the new lives he had brought to countless people, walking through the mortal world, reading all living beings. This would anchor him deeply in the entire world. Come to think of it, this kind of style, is it Xianxia or Cthulhu? Han Xiao mocked him in his mind. Then he stopped smiling. Stand still. Virtual abilities were fully activated. The next moment, countless virtual souls split out and scattered to the various planets along the quantum network, taking in the lives of countless people. The people of the various planets were lit up, and the virtual vision seemed to see a bright galaxy. The information anchor point seemed to have absorbed endless nutrients and continued to grow in this process. Central Galaxy, 3 Universal Civilizations Joint Conference Room. The remote projections of Marbruce and the other 2 sat behind the table, whispering to each other from time to time. their eyes always fixed on the door. Strange, why isn't Black Star here yet? I've already sent him a message, but he hasn't replied yet. I wonder if he received the message from today's meeting? He must have received it, but he's probably too lazy to reply. Recently, he's also been busy preparing for the information transformation. Speaking of which, what does he need to prepare? I saw the recent intelligence report that Black Star has been visiting various civilizations and releasing and receiving data on the quantum network. I wonder what effect this has on our plan? I don't understand, but he's the user of the information materialization device. He definitely knows what he's doing. The three of them discussed softly. During this period of time, they had also been preparing for the transformation and had completed a series of preparatory measures. Although Han Xiao controlled the information materialization device, it was not something that could be directly activated. According to the rumors of the Sanctum, many auxiliary facilities were needed to transform the entire dark side universe. What the three universal civilizations did was to create a large number of supporting facilities for the information materialization device and install them in various divided areas. The blueprints were provided by Han Xiao, and they were all auxiliary equipment used to strengthen the change of the information form. The three universal civilizations spent some manpower and resources to install these supporting facilities. The hardware aspect had been resolved, and now there was only the coordination problem left. They needed to finalize the official implementation time of the transformation before it could be implemented. Many of them were trivial matters, but the three universal civilizations handled them easily, so Han Xiao assigned them all these chores. Just as the three of them were chatting, the door suddenly opened. The secretary led Han Xiao in before leaving and closing the door, leaving space for the big shots. Black Star, you're late. We thought you weren't coming today. Mar Bruce heaved a sigh of relief. I was preparing for the transformation and was delayed. Han Xiao explained casually. Just as the three of them were about to say something, their gazes suddenly became strange. Although Han Xiao's appearance did not change, for some reason, they felt that the feeling Han Xiao gave them was completely different from the last time they met. Now, Black Star's aura gave them an indescribable feeling. It was inexplicably deep, as if they were staring at a black hole. You seem a little different. Marbru's tone was hesitant, suspecting that it was his imagination. I've deepened my connection with the dark side universe. This is all normal. Han Xiao waved his hand nonchalantly. During this period of time, he had visited most of the civilizations in the Galactic Society and taken them all into his heart. He had perfected the last information anchor point. At this point, his information foundation had become extremely thick, giving him the illusion that everything was one. Han Xiao did not go into details. He paused for a moment before asking. He paused for a moment and said, I'm almost done with my preparations. What about you guys? He paused for a moment and said, we're still inclined to spend some time investigating all the sanctums. But in principle, we're all willing to cooperate with you to carry out the transformation plan. We just need to set a time. All right, the transformation isn't done overnight. It might take a few years, or it might take decades, or even centuries, so the sooner we start, the better. We're here for a meeting to discuss the exact date. 3. The man nodded. All right, let's talk then. After saying that, Han Xiao exhaled softly. I've finally reached this step. Chapter 1485. The meeting between the two parties did not last long. In the end, the date was set to 9 years later. Without the knowledge of the entire Galactic Society, the new fate of the dark side universe they were in was finalized. Countless galactic residents were still immersed in a peaceful and happy life. In a place they could not see, the three universal civilizations and Han Xiao were silently preparing for the true form transformation of the dark side universe. Day by day, the date of the official implementation of the plan was approaching. In the long-awaited era of peace, the days passed quickly. The stars moved, the sun rose, and the moon set. Time flowed like water, never to return. 9 years passed quietly as the various large organizations rested. The Galactic Society had already changed, and a new generation of young people had grown up. However, it seemed like nothing had changed. The three universal civilizations, the Super's Holy Land and the Supercluster Alliance, were still entrenched in one area. Today was the agreed date, and it was also the starting point of the Dark Side universe's fate. In the central galaxy, the three universal civilizations had specially built a military-restricted zone for this day. Countless information form reaction enhancement devices formed a dense and neat array in the starry sky. They were distributed layer by layer, forming a sphere. Han Xiao was at the center of all the auxiliary device arrays, floating alone in space. In the distance, the fleets of the three universal civilizations surrounded him layer after layer as guards to prevent any accidents from disturbing Han Xiao's transformation. In the main ship, the remote projections of the three rulers looked at Han Xiao outside the porthole with solemn expressions. "Your Excellency Blackstar, we're all ready." "Please." Mar Bruce paused, took a deep breath, and said in the communication channel, "Let's begin." "Okay." Han Xiao's expression was calm as he responded softly with a complicated look in his eyes. Although he had rehearsed for this day more than once in the past 9 years, he could not help but feel emotional when it actually happened. The plan to transform the Dark Side universe was still a secret of the upper echelons. The three universal civilizations hoped to quietly solve this ultimate problem that involved the truth of the universe while countless galactic residents were asleep. It would be best if the Dark Side universe and the real universe overlapped without anyone noticing. Therefore, Han Xiao only told the relevant information to Ames and a few other trustworthy people. The others continued to live as usual on this day. Han Xiaoxin's psyche sank into his body, and his chest slowly glowed as if it had turned into a white space tunnel. The space here was folding and contracting. Soon, in a dazzling white light, the world tree that had taken root in the inner space appeared in the outside world. It emitted a vibrant green light and spun around. Han Xiao lowered his head and looked at the miniature figure of the Tree of World. His mind was already connected, and he could activate the information materialization function at any time. But at this moment, he stopped, and the look in his eyes changed. Information anchor points flashed in his head one after another. Rippling illusions seemed to be popping up in front of his eyes. He seemed to be reviewing his bizarre, magnificent life in the past 100 years from the perspective of a third person. In the end, the image was fixed on countless familiar figures. There were old acquaintances, enemies who had passed away, and friends who were still in the present. I hope that everything that has happened here can anchor my existence. Don't let me forget that I've been here before. The next moment, Han Xiao no longer hesitated and activated the information materialization function of the Tree of World. As if the universe had just been born, Han Xiao's figure was instantly drowned in light. It was as if endless light sprayed out, filling everyone's vision. At this moment, everyone in the entire galactic society felt something and subconsciously thought of Blackstar. On the top floor of the palace on floating Dragon Island, Ames stood on the balcony with her hands behind her back, looking up at the bright galaxy in the sky. Her long hair and black dress fluttered in the wind like dancing black flames. "Mommy, I thought of Daddy just now." A childish voice sounded behind her, and a little girl in a little skirt ran out of the room. She stumbled on the way and almost fell. This little girl was about 7 or 8 years old. She looked like she was carved from jade, and her face was a little chubby. Her eyes were black and bright like gems, and she looked lively and cute. She was the only child she had with Han Xiao. Ames turned around, and a doting expression appeared on her face. She bent over and hugged her daughter. She scratched her little nose and chuckled softly. "I miss Daddy too." The little girl hugged Ames' arm and stayed comfortably in her embrace. She blinked her big eyes and said with a little grievance, "Daddy hasn't come for a long time. Dad hasn't come to see me for a long time. Where'd he go?" "He's doing a great job." Ames smiled faintly. "Then, when will Daddy come back?" The little girl's eyes widened and curiosity overflowed. "I don't know either." Ames shook her head. She hugged her daughter with one hand and pointed at the deep starry sky with the other as she chuckled. But no matter where he is, he will definitely look after you. When you grow up, he will come back. Real universe, solar system behind Neptune. A small exploration space station covered in a black and blue coating was quietly suspended in outer space. It was disguised as a meteorite and looked inconspicuous. At this moment, in the observation room of the space station, several intelligent creatures in heavy spacesuits were adjusting instruments. Their body structure was similar to that of humans, but they had hard skin covered with spikes. They were short, with an average height of only about 3 meters. Most of these instruments were long-range observation instruments. Above the instruments were densely packed screens, and on them were scenes of bustling cities on Earth. At this moment, one of the hard-shelled men in the room turned on the video recorder, cleared his throat, and spoke in his unique language. He said, "Text message recording of the 27081 star time. The behavior of today's observation target is as usual. There are no abnormalities. We have not been discovered." End. Another boring day, a thin, hard-shell man next to him interrupted. He stretched in his seat, and the hard shell and bones all over his body emitted a crackling sound. The person who was recording the video seemed to be the captain. Without turning his head, he replied solemnly, "No abnormalities are the best news. Our job is to ensure that the observation target does not have a technological explosion before the arrival of the follow-up troops and develop an interstellar weapon that is enough to threaten us." Yes. I was just complaining. I really hope that the next shift will come soon. I'd rather freeze and sleep than keep an eye on this week's surface civilization every star time. Sigh, I really want to go home. The thin, hard-shelled man who had spoken earlier sounded helpless. This group of intelligent creatures did not belong to this area. They were distant guests from other galaxies from the Kabang civilization. In order to search for alien civilizations, the Kabang civilization sent teams of explorers into the galaxy. They took exploration spaceships that had always been hidden and camouflaged, drifting in the universe for a long time. All the crew members were in frozen hibernation. When they discovered traces of civilization, the intelligence system of the spaceship would automatically wake up the hibernating crew members. This group of Kabang people was one of the interstellar explorers. Many years ago, when they came to the solar system, the spaceship discovered the probes sent by the Earth civilization into outer space, so they woke up the team. This team used the detection equipment on the spaceship to lock onto the Earth civilization. Then, they chose a remote location and turned the spaceship into a small space station. They completed a further disguise and hid there. This group of Kabang explorers adhered to the principle of non-interference, non-communication, and non-exposure. They silently waited in the solar system and used the interstellar observation equipment on the spaceship to monitor Earth for a long time. They had never been discovered. Stop complaining and pay more attention to your mission. The captain of the Kabang explorers turned off the video recorder and suddenly paused. However, the main force is only 580 star hours away from us. We won't have to monitor them for too long before we're free. That's true. I really want to end the mission as soon as possible. I really can't stand eating these nutrition pastes every day. I really want to go back and eat something good, the skinny Kabang team member said with longing. This team of explorers had long sent the news of the existence of Earth civilization back to their mother planet. The large fleet of the Kabang civilization had already set off from their hometown. However, they had not developed Stargate technology. The main force had already traveled in the universe at close to the speed of light for a long time, and they were not far away now. The explorers present had been lurking in the solar system for many years, and they were just outposts. Although their technology was much more advanced, they still did not dare to rashly come into contact with Earth civilization. Their mission was to monitor and observe Earth civilization all day long and guide the main force that followed. Only when the main force arrived would they have sufficient confidence. Whether it was invading or destroying it, they would be able to do it with ease. When the time came, They would consider how to arrange for this surface civilization. The captain of the Kabang explorers was about to say something, but at this moment, the surveillance radar of the space station suddenly rang with an urgent notification. Beep, 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 beep. Everyone was stunned and quickly rushed to the screen. They were shocked to see that the readings on it had suddenly become chaotic. What's going on? The group of Kabang explorers quickly adjusted the equipment. However, the equipment did not have any malfunctions. The various parameters of the outside world that were detected were becoming more and more abnormal, especially the spatial curvature coefficients. There was an astonishing deviation. At the same time, with Earth civilization as the center, a large number of spatial folds appeared. The range was spreading outwards at an astonishing speed. What kind of phenomenon is this? There are no similar event models in the database. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. Right at this moment, an invisible energy wave suddenly erupted and spread out rapidly into the universe, instantly sweeping through all the planets and the space station they were in. The energy readings instantly broke through the radar's power limit, burning out the radar's equipment. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly touched their bodies. However, they did not suffer any damage from this energy. I've never seen an energy surge of this level before. What exactly happened? Just as the group was feeling extremely surprised, the spatial fold phenomenon had already spread to the vicinity of the space station. Through the porthole, they discovered that all the space within their line of sight was distorted and folded like ripples. From their point of view, it was as if the entire universe had become a stirred quagmire. A torrent of starlight and dark matter was constantly spinning. Amidst the layers of folds, they seemed to see strange illusions. Countless civilizations and planets that they had never seen before were floating and faintly discernible. In a daze, they suddenly had an intuition. This universe seems to be about to change. Everyone pay attention. The new version will be released in 5 minutes. Everyone will work overtime today. Everyone has to log in immediately. I want to check on you. Do you hear me? Zhu Xiaohua ordered loudly. Seeing that the dozens of employees in the studio responded, he nodded in satisfaction. He turned around and walked into his private office. He closed the door and looked at the new Galaxy game cabin in the middle of the room. He rubbed his hands excitedly. Ever since the Black Star Core video series with the ID Pork Bun Beats Dog became popular, Zhu Xiaohua's career was on track. He rented a floor as a studio, expanded his business, made a brand, and made a lot of money. Now that the popularity of Galaxy had reached its peak, he placed more importance on this main business. 2 days ago, Galaxy had entered the version update, and today was the day the update was completed. Version 6.0 would be officially released, and he placed great importance on it. He had already prepared to log in as soon as possible. Zhu Xiaohua's heart itched when he thought about how the new version would unlock higher levels. Although the plot of Galaxy seemed to be heading toward peace, and it was difficult to find any more explosive points, he believed that the players would be the main characters of the stage after Galaxy. Now that he had unlocked the Calamity grade, as his level continued to increase, the players who wanted the world to be in chaos would definitely not be able to hold themselves back. They would definitely mess up the situation in the game, spontaneously leading to countless conflicts and interesting, exciting stories. This way, there would definitely be no lack of material for videos. Zhu Xiaohua already had an idea. He planned to adjust the focus of the video and no longer focus on the Black Star Core. Instead, he would chase after the various collisions between players and NPC forces and make various series and interviews. Just the thought of having endless material and the possibility of a big sale made him so excited that his bladder tightened. I'm going to be rich again this time. Zhu Xiaohua was excited as he skillfully laid down in the game cabin. The lid of the cabin closed, and the built-in screen showed the countdown to the completion of the update. He widened his eyes as he watched the time pass second by second. He felt that time was passing too slowly and could not help but shake his legs. There's still a few seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's enough. The countdown on the built-in screen reached the last second, and it became the login interface. It finally became the version 6.0 that he had been longing for. Zhu Xiaohua was overjoyed and could not wait to activate the game cabin. He quickly closed his eyes and prepared to enter the game. However, after waiting for more than a minute with his eyes closed, he did not enter Galaxy like before. Zhu Xiaohua was so anxious that he could not help but open his eyes. Strange, why can't I log in? Could it be that the game cabin malfunctioned? No way, this was changed 2 days ago. Zhu Xiaohua opened the game cabin in confusion and climbed out again. He squatted down to see if there was a problem with the lid of the game cabin. However, at this moment, there was a knock on the door. A few employees walked in with helpless expressions. "Boss, there's a problem. None of us can log in." So I'm not the only one. Looks like it's not a problem with the game cabin. Have you seen the official website? Yes, it seems like no one can log in. Hearing this, Zhu Xiaohua was stunned for a moment. He walked to the computer and opened the official website of Galaxy. He entered the forum and found that a large group of players were posting, but none of them could log in. Then it seems like there's a bug in the new version. Maybe there's a problem with the optical computer itself. But it's also strange. No one can log in. For such a big matter, the official website should have issued a statement to explain it. Why is there no movement? Zhu Xiaohua flipped through the post and was a little puzzled. Why don't you ask? An employee suggested. Oh, that's fine too. I'll ask the official. Zhu Xiaohua nodded. He had been invited to attend several professional leagues as a guest, so he had internal channels to contact the official. He could ask about the situation. Picking up his phone from the table, Zhu Xiaohua opened his social media app and found the official he knew. He was about to send a message to ask. However, at this moment, there was a commotion outside the office, mixed with cries of surprise. What's going on outside? Why is it so noisy? Zhu Xiaohua frowned and stopped editing the message. He walked out of the office in large strides and saw that all the employees were gathered in front of the window, looking up as if they were looking at something. What are you looking at? Why aren't you returning to your posts? Zhu Xiaohua was a little dissatisfied. He strode over and also went to the window. He subconsciously looked out and suddenly paused. On the road outside the window, all the pedestrians stopped and looked at the sky. On the balconies and windows of every floor of the surrounding buildings, there were people who stuck their heads out. They also maintained the posture of looking up at the sky. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. Seeing this strange scene, Zhu Xiaohua's heart tightened. He slowly raised his head and looked at the sky. Evening had just passed, and night had just fallen. A resplendent galaxy had already appeared in the sky. More stars lit up in the night sky. The stars were like a waterfall, hanging upside down in the Milky Way. They were swaying and spinning, and the sky seemed to have turned into a vortex. It was completely distorted, as if someone was stirring the sky. This is... Zhu Xiaohua stared at this scene in a daze, his mouth wide open. Just as everyone was dumbfounded, spatial ripples suddenly appeared in the sky. Interstellar fleets appeared out of thin air one after another, as if they had always been there, instantly attracting the attention of everyone on the ground. Zhu Xiaohua also looked over, but his eyes suddenly widened as he stared blankly at the identical emblem on the outer armor of these battleships. This emblem was too familiar, and he recognized it at a glance. Before anyone could react, an even more familiar figure suddenly appeared in the air. As if waking up from a deep sleep, he slowly opened his eyes. The expression of this figure slowly turned from confusion to surprise, and in the end, it turned into nostalgia. His lips moved slightly. "Hometown, I'm back." Although he was far away, for some reason, his voice seemed to ignore the distance and sounded in the hearts of everyone who was looking at him. At this moment, Zhu Xiaohua, like all the employees around him, felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. His face was filled with confusion, and his mind was blank. At this moment, the figure in the sky seemed to have sensed the aura of a familiar person. He lowered his head and looked over. Across the distant night sky, his gaze met Zhu Xiaohua's from afar, and he revealed a playful smile. Zhu Xiaohua instantly woke up from his dream and shuddered. He took large strides back in disbelief and tripped over the table and chair, collapsing to the ground with a thud. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and there was only thick disbelief on his face. His lips trembled, and his voice unconsciously rose as he cried out involuntarily, "Black star, black star, black star, black star." On this day, the world welcomed a drastic change. Countless illusions that should have disappeared in the long river of history reappeared. Some people called it invasion of the entire realm, while others called it turning point of fate. Some people felt that this was a turtle dove taking over a magpie's nest, while others felt that this was spreading out. Some people thought that this was the beginning of the end, while others thought that this was the continuation of life. However, no matter what their opinion was, everything that happened on this day was remembered by countless people and opened a new era. Chapter 1486. At this point, the main text was over, and the storyline had basically been pushed out. It was completed according to the outline, and it was not too far off from the expected time. I said that it would be completed by the end of last month. It was just nice that the plot ended here. The original plan was to return to the real universe as the ending, and what I wanted was the feeling of an abrupt end. Although there were still things to write after that, that would be another story. The godly mechanic in the city, that would not be mentioned in the main text. I had been writing this book for 3.5 years, and it was my first time writing a 5 million-word long novel. There were still some areas where I was inexperienced, but looking back, the overall completion rate was not bad. It was a good thing that I had written what I wanted to write. After a while, I'll have to reread it from the beginning and sort out the pros and cons. My original intention was to write a book that was relaxing and interesting. When I look back at it, it's not bad. Sometimes the humorous passages I wrote make me laugh out loud. That's pretty rare. Although I had written a few books, I always felt a little melancholy when they ended. After all, Mechanic had been serialized for 3.5 years, and it had become a habit. I looked forward to taking a break when I was serializing, but after I finished, I felt that games and movies were not exciting. Some people joked that writing was more fun than anything else, and that was indeed the case. Once I got used to it, I would not be able to get rid of it. If I did not write for a day, I would be bored out of my mind, but when I did, I would feel mentally exhausted. I feel that the serialization period is equivalent to leveling up, and the free time after the book is finished is the time to systematically add stat points. It's impossible not to summarize the book after it's finished. To be honest, this book of mine has improved a lot compared to the previous one, and there's a difference of about 5 levels. The results of this book were not bad, with an average of 54,000 orders. It was also quite popular on the international website. The initial order count was about 3,000, but it gradually became better in the middle, and it slowly increased. Some brothers felt that I wrote well in the early stages. Actually, from my perspective, the early stages were the most immature. However, when the book was first published, it was when the enthusiasm was at its best, and it made up for that. All in all, this book was written with much trepidation, as if I was walking on thin ice. Every day was a new challenge, and I was afraid that one day my condition would be unstable and I would go down the wrong path. It would be difficult to change during the serialization process, and I had at least met with this kind of danger more than 10 times. Fortunately, I was able to react in time and delete and rewrite the book before it was published. The mental pressure of maintaining a best-selling book was much greater than expected. However, to me personally, this was an interesting process. 3.5 years was enough for a student to finish high school and enter university. With half a year to spare, I might even be able to find a girlfriend. Long-term serialization was rather torturous, but it was also a rare life experience. With this book as a foundation, I had experience with the structure of long stories. Later on, I could use this as a foundation and become more familiar with it, increasing the speed of my updates. Looking back at the serialization process of this book, the rhythm, structure, results, and other aspects were generally quite stable. It was naturally not easy to stabilize a player NPCs theme. Later on, I changed the focus and extended the life of the book from gimmicks to story content. I did a good job in this regard. I was not a person who would explode with enthusiasm. I tried to stabilize the number of words that I could endure every day so that I could maintain this state for a long time. Rashly increasing or decreasing the number of words would disrupt the writing rhythm, so I still had to make a choice and focus on stability. In the end, I was quite satisfied with the overall completion rate. Actually, I had to write slowly. The best form of serialization was like the big eyeballs, scram, and squid. It was stable, strong, and enjoyable to write. However, the market was particular about the output, so I would think of ways to increase it later. When I was writing this closing speech, I had a sudden impulse to calculate. The outline, details, and scrap drafts of this book added up to a total of 45 million words, which was almost a third of the total number of words in this book. I felt that there were not many people who wrote more words than me, so I had to go through them from the beginning. My scalp was numb just from looking at it. There were just too many words. As for the creative concepts and creative techniques, I felt that every book was a textbook, so it was too troublesome to talk about them. I had not even finished sorting them out yet, so it would be best for those who were interested to refine them themselves. Returning to the story itself, the overall structure of the book was quite clear to me. This was done well, and I quite liked the structure of Shanghai's world. However, because of this, I'd spread the book too widely and needed more time to finish it. Otherwise, I would have finished it in half a year. Actually, most of the holes were more or less filled in. There were some places that I felt were too abrupt, but there were basically foreshadowing at the beginning of the book. I could always find them when I looked back. This ending was set more than a year ago. I also did not like the type of ending where everything was explained in detail. I preferred to revisit the past or leave the past blank. No matter how grand the story was, we would still have to return to a normal life in the end. I quite like this concept. I did not intend to write the story after returning to the real universe in the first place. The clues were all out, and the rest could be extrapolated, leaving some aftertaste. As for the characters, although the main character prioritized benefits, he was always able to bring good changes to the world. Regardless of his intentions, he was still quite good. Some of the characters had their own personalities as well. However, in the entire story, my favorite character was actually Loggy. He was a resolute pessimist and lazy enough. If he could lie down, he would not sit down. He was basically the state of a dream, huh? I seem to have gone too far. It was easy to ramble on when writing an acceptance speech. Back to the main topic. In any case, after I finished writing the main story, I would probably write some side stories from time to time. It might be about some characters or extended stories that were not easy to write in the main story. For example, the details during the various version updates, or the personal adventures of some characters. As for what to write, I would think about it later. As for the sequels, that would depend on the situation. I did not have any ideas at the moment, but I might write one in the future when I was interested. During the serialization, my brain was more single-threaded. I was immersed in the world of the book, afraid that I would lose focus if I pulled it out, so I did not pay attention to other things. Many things were delayed. After I finished writing, I still had to go for a full body checkup, see a doctor, and train my body. Once I had more or less recovered, I would write the new book seriously. Currently, I had only created a blank folder and had not thought about anything else. Only after I emptied my brain for a while would I have the mental energy to come up with ideas. Also, regarding news about the manga and anime adaptations of Super Godly Mechanic, if you're interested, you can follow Chijian Shipegia on Weibo or Chijian Shipegia. If there is any first-hand news or resources, I will release them and announce them. Finally, thank you all for your support, especially those who wrote in this chapter and those who wrote to Jinshu Works. They often inspired me. They are all talents and have good words. The boss is very generous and grateful. To be able to earn money by writing books and be self-reliant is quite a good thing in this era. Whatever I write, as long as people find it interesting and think it's worth reading, it's enough for me. We will meet again in the future. I wish you all a happy life. Chi Peijia, thank you. Chapter 1487. The crowd was marching, the angry shouts, the burning flames, and the frenzied atmosphere. The flag of Golan fluttered in the billowing black smoke. We demand the truth. Against the tyranny of Golan. Hand over all related members of Mimic. Get off the stage. Get off the stage. A sea of people had gathered in front of the Golan National Building. Countless faces were filled with anger. Countless banners were raised in the air. Countless arms were waving in the air. Chaotic roars pierced through the clouds. Rows of fully armed guards stood in front of the building. Their faces were stern. They formed a cordon with anti-explosion shields, withstanding the shoving and crashing of the crowd. Dull thuds were heard frequently. Broken glass, empty bullet shells, trampled cans, banners full of footprints, and debris were everywhere. The fire was burning, scattering ashes like snowflakes. The blackened scorch marks on the ground mixed with the solidified blood stains, emitting an unpleasant and pungent smell. Due to the multiple attacks by Mimic, the Golan National Building had tightened their control. Many people believed them, but someone in the know exposed the truth. It turned out that Mimic's actions were actually ordered by the Golan National Building. When the tricks were exposed, the people of Golan started a fierce resistance. Many people felt like they were being tricked. They went to the streets to protest and demonstrate. The situation had been going on for many days already. The public opinion was overwhelming. The Golan National Building could not hold on any longer. They could no longer control the situation. A group of people was demonstrating in front of the building, trying to break into the tower. No one in the management was willing to stand out. In the crowd, Sean's thin body was swaying left and right. However, his hands were holding the flagpole tightly. He raised Golan's flag high and shouted with the crowd. His hair, which he had not had the mood to wash for days, was matted, reflecting the oily light. Veins were popping out on his neck. His young, handsome face was twisted. He looked haggard, yet agitated. "Sean! Sean!" The shouts were deafening. He could barely hear what he was saying. It was only when the voice calling his name slowly approached him and repeated it 7 or 8 times that Sean vaguely heard someone calling him. He turned around and looked at the source of the voice. A short and sturdy young man pushed his way through the crowd. His shoulders and waist were arched as he struggled to move forward. His fierce face was dripping with sweat. He was holding a small package in his arms, and behind him were several young men of the same age. They struggled to squeeze to Sean's side. "Mago, why are you here? Didn't your family object to your participation in the protest?" Xiao Un's eyes widened as he looked at the stocky youth, a look of surprise on his face. Because he had been shouting for so long, his throat felt like it was being torn apart, and his voice was incomparably hoarse. The people in front of him were his neighbors, childhood friends, and best friends that he usually hung out with. However, due to the strong opposition from their families, these best friends could not participate in the demonstration organized by the Golan Civil Resistance. Only their family members had passed away very early, and no one had stopped them. Therefore, they had spontaneously participated in the demonstration out of passion. "Hey, we snuck out." Mago chuckled and opened the package a little. Inside, there was a green military canteen with a little paint peeling off and a few bags of fast food. There were also some protective equipment, such as wrist guards and elbow guards. Without asking for Sean's opinion, Mago hung the strap of the package on Sean's body. Then, without any explanation, he snatched the Golan flag that Sean was waving in his hand. Sean subconsciously snatched it back, but he was unable to shake Mago's firm and strong hand. Unable to take back the flag, he could not help but be surprised. "What are you doing? What else can I do?" "Of course. I'm here to wave the flag and shout for you. I'm about to vomit from the stench of your sweat. Look at you now. How long have you not rested? Don't worry, we'll hold the fort here. We'll save a spot for you. Go eat something and rest first." Wow. Protest against tyranny. Mago's tone was matter of fact. He replaced Sean's position, held the flag high, and shouted excitedly with the crowd. "It's too chaotic here. You don't have to come," Sean said helplessly. "What are you saying? You can come, but we can't? Who doesn't want to contribute to Golan? If it weren't for our family watching over us, we would have followed you to march." Mago pretended to be unhappy and said loudly, It's precisely because it's too chaotic here that we have to look after you. How can we not know what kind of bad temper you have? You're so hot-blooded that you don't care about the consequences. With your small body, aren't you afraid of being crushed by others? If we don't come, what if you're in danger? Sean's lips quivered, and he said hesitantly, "But your family." All right, all right. Why do you have so much nonsense to say? Now, you know how to worry? Why didn't you worry about yourself first? Mago patted Sean's shoulder with one hand and said casually, "If you dare to come, why wouldn't we dare?" Sean was moved. He sniffled and said, "You guys are making me want to cry. Come on, we're all brothers. Don't say thank you to disgust me." Mago gave him a thumbs up and raised his eyebrows. "Don't worry. Who asked you to be our little brother? I'll protect you." The other brothers laughed when they heard this. They reached out and rubbed Sean's head. Among all his friends, Sean's body was famous for being thin and weak. Therefore, Mago and the other brothers took care of him and treated him like a little brother. Xiao En felt a surge of warmth in his heart, and his eyes were warm. His family had died early, and the closest ones were this group of brothers. They were all hot-blooded youths with the same ideals. At this time, when he felt the good intentions and care of his friends, he only felt that his tired body seemed to be injected with new vitality. "Okay, then I'll leave this to you guys. I'll go to the side to rest." Sean pursed his dry lips and didn't continue to refuse the good intentions of his brothers. He nodded heavily. "Go, go." Mago waved his hand indifferently. He turned his head and excitedly shouted with the crowd. Sean had a smile on his face. He tightened the thick bag on his body and was about to squeeze out of the crowd. However, in the next moment, the shrill air defense alarm suddenly sounded from afar and quickly spread throughout the city. Woo, woo, woo. Both the crowd and the guards in front of the building were given a great fright. The crowd subconsciously stopped their protests, and the guards slowed down their strength. Everyone looked into the sky with confused expressions. "What's going on?" Xiao En and his buddies beside him were also startled. They looked left and right with a puzzled expression. Suddenly, a sharp whistling sound came from afar. Trails of smoke appeared in the sky and descended from the sky, landing between the buildings in the distance. Just when everyone was puzzled, in the next moment, an ear-piercing explosion suddenly exploded out. Bang! The sudden burst of shock waves swept through the streets like a hurricane. Everywhere it passed, the windows of all the buildings were shattered. Everyone's widened eyes reflected the spreading shockwave. In the next second, the shockwave, which was wrapped in countless debris, swept over the crowd in the square. Everyone was shaken to the ground. Sean slammed heavily onto the ground. He was dragged a few meters away before the shockwave dissipated. His arms and legs were scratched, and a stream of blood flowed down from his forehead, blurring his vision. His brain was concussed from the impact, causing the world in his eyes to spin. His eardrums were ringing, and he felt like vomiting. He looked up in horror and saw that the city in the distance had changed drastically. There were violent explosions, and buildings collapsed and turned into ruins. Flames danced wildly in the sky, and thick smoke billowed, transforming into mushrooms. Air raid. Is it a missile? Xiao En's eyes widened in disbelief. Panic spread through the square in an instant, and all the demonstrators and guards showed a look of horror. At this moment, small black dots suddenly appeared in the distant sky. Fighter jets were flying toward them at high speed, heading straight for the Jelen House building. They were closing in on the crowd in a menacing manner. Seeing this, the crowd woke up from their daze, and screams pierced through the sky. "Run! Enemy attack!" The crowd scattered and fled. They had no time to care about anything else. The placards used for protest were thrown all over the ground. In an instant, the square fell into disorderly chaos. Many people were pushed and fell to the ground. They were instantly drowned in the crowd that was fleeing in panic, and no one made a sound. Sean was completely stunned. He sat on the ground with his mouth wide open. Just as he was about to be trampled by the crowd, a strong force came from his shoulder and pulled him up. Mago had already crawled up from the ground. His entire body was covered in blood. Unknowingly, he had come over and pulled Xiao and up from the ground. With a forceful push on Xiao's shoulder, he pushed Xiao and away. With a face full of anxiety, he angrily shouted, "What are you waiting for? Run now!" Sean's mind was in a mess. He was in a daze. His strong fear and survival instinct made him unable to think about anything else. He instinctively moved his arms mechanically and ran with the crowd. Sean finally woke up from his daze after running for a long distance. He quickly turned around to look for Mago and his friends. However, they were separated by the crowd while they were running. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More whistling sounds came from the sky. He turned around subconsciously and saw fighter jets approaching the Glan residence building. The national emblem of Raylan on the fighter jets reflected a blinding light. Short-range missiles were fired from the fighter jets. They left long trails of flame behind them and hit the Glan residence building accurately. Boom, boom, boom. Intense explosions sounded. The Glan residence building was destroyed beyond recognition. It was full of holes. Flames burst out, illuminating the terrified faces. Under everyone's gaze, the Glan residence building collapsed. It fell in the shattered square, kicking up a cloud of dust. The reflection in Sean's eyes. Glan's flag was burned to ashes in the raging flames. Chapter 1488. The world seemed to have been thrown into chaos overnight. The sudden flames of war engulfed more than 100 countries. The international treaties were completely torn apart. The powerful countries crossed their borders willfully and invaded the smaller countries around them without any warning, launching blitzkrieg attacks without holding back. There were many theories about the cause of the war. The most common theory was that a certain galactic civilization had arrived and brought knowledge that could overturn the world. However, other than that, the people did not know any details. The attitude of the more than 10 superpowers when they started the war was so resolute. It was as if they wanted to shatter an old era and reshuffle the cards. In just a few months, 16 small countries were destroyed. Countless people on Blue Star became refugees. Some lost their homes, and some were taken over by the enemy country's army. As a small country, Galen did not have much of a chance to choose its fate when it was bordered by Raylan. Faced with the full force of Raylan's military, Galen was completely defeated within a few months. It lost all its organized armed forces and was at the mercy of Raylan. The city was devastated. Charred buildings and ruins were everywhere. Deep pits were formed on the ground from the explosions. Black smoke was still rising from some places, and sporadic gunshots could be heard from time to time. The refugees of Galen wandered in the ruins in groups of 2s and 3s. Some of them had a numb expression like the walking dead, and some of them had constricted pupils like frightened birds. Sean followed a group of refugees to look for resources in the ruins. He moved his body with difficulty. His entire body was covered in dust and mud. He had not washed for many days, so he was dirty and unkempt. He was as thin as a stick, and his eye sockets were sunken. He was extremely haggard, and his expression was numb. Raylan's invasion came without any warning. They only sent out ground troops after the bombardment and eliminated the armed forces of Galen step by step. During this period, the importance of settling down the refugees in Galen was not high. There was a limit to the number of refugees in the refugee camp. The Raylan troops spent most of their energy on cleaning up the resistance forces. They only locked down the city and did not have much energy to accommodate all the refugees. At most, they would occasionally airdrop some resources to allow the refugees to survive in the lockdown city. Sean was lucky enough to survive the initial round of bombardment, but he had been separated from Mago and the others in the chaos. During this period of time, he could only work together with another group of refugees, searching for supplies in the ruins or fighting with other refugees when Raylan airdropped aid. He was like a walking corpse, trying to survive as long as he could. However, over the past few days, countless refugees had ransacked the city over and over again. There were almost no resources left in the ruins, and it was getting harder and harder to survive. Sean and the others walked through the ruins and saw the corpses of refugees who had died of starvation, thirst, and illness. Most of them had died in the past few days. After rummaging through several ruins, there was still nothing to be gained. Shawan was so hungry that he was seeing stars. He sat down against the wall and panted. He felt that his body was incomparably heavy, as if he was about to sink into the mud. "Are you okay? Can you continue searching for supplies?" Frank saw him sit down, so he leaned over and asked while panting. He was a new friend that Sean had made in this group of refugees. They had taken care of each other over the past few days and had become familiar with each other. "I'm so hungry. I don't have any strength." Sean's throat was so dry that it was almost on fire. "Hurry up and get up. Otherwise, you won't get a share of what the others find." Frank tried to pull Sean's arm, but he was also exhausted. With a pull, his body tilted and fell to the ground. He panted, and the breath he exhaled blew away a small piece of dust. "Let me rest. I'm starving too." Frank did not have the strength to get up, so he simply leaned against the wall and leaned against Sean. Sean's body tilted, and he almost fell, but he did not have the strength to push him away. He could only close his eyes and hypnotize himself to relieve his hunger. At this moment, Frank suddenly spoke, his voice low and dejected. "Sean, do you think our army can still come and save us?" "They definitely can." Sean opened his eyes with difficulty. His voice was weak, but his tone was firm. "It's been so long. Do you really believe it?" Frank panted and said in a hoarse voice, "Raylan is coming aggressively. Golan can't even take care of himself. How can he have the time to come and save us? Instead of hoping for Golan to send reinforcements, why don't we count on Raylan to take in refugees on a large scale? That way, we can at least survive." Sean gritted his teeth. "How can we count on the enemy? When we met other refugees, didn't they say that Raylan was purging refugees? Occasionally, they would send ground troops to capture a group of refugees in the city. Some people even said that they saw carts of Raylan refugees being transported out of the camp to be cremated. Who knows what's going on?" Frank said weakly. "As long as you can give me a mouthful of food, I'll do anything." At this moment, a faint noise sounded not far away. The refugees were searching the ruins with Sean and the others gathered over, as if something had happened. A few of their slightly better refugee companions walked to the two of them, pulled Sean and Frank up, and asked, "How are you? Can you still walk?" "I'm okay." Sean wobbled and leaned against the wall. He asked in confusion, "What's going on over there?" "We've run into another group of refugees. Let's all go over, in case they think of stealing our supplies." The few of them replied and rushed over with Sean and Boar. There were too many refugee groups struggling at death's door in the city. Most of the refugees huddled together to help each other and prevent others from robbing them. Even though they were all refugees, some of them couldn't care less when they couldn't survive. People who were on the verge of death wouldn't let go of any life-saving straw. It was not uncommon for them to rob each other and kill each other. Sean and the others quickly arrived at the back of the crowd and saw that there was another group of refugees opposite them. They were also skinny and haggard. The two sides were facing each other and looking at each other vigilantly. In the middle of the two groups of people were the more prestigious representatives of their respective groups, and they were negotiating with each other. Sean glanced at the opposite side and suddenly froze. A stunned expression appeared on his face. In the other group of refugees, he suddenly saw the figures of Mago and a few of his best friends. Although their clothes were ragged, he still recognized them at a glance. During these days of hiding, Sean didn't miss his best friends. Because the city ruins were too big and all kinds of communication signals were blocked by the Raylan, his search had been fruitless. He had always been worried that Mago and the others had met with misfortune. He didn't expect to meet them by chance today. Mago! Mago! Sean was pleasantly surprised. He didn't care about anything else. He raised his arm and shouted Mago's name with a hoarse voice. Because of his weak body, he couldn't shout too loudly, but it still attracted the attention of some people. Mago's ears twitched. He looked over in confusion, trying to find who was shouting his name. But at this moment, the ear-piercing roar of an engine suddenly sounded from afar. To dash, they saw an armed Raylan convoy rampaging on the heavily damaged streets of the city, heading straight toward them. It seemed to have locked onto their position. Raylan, run! The two groups of refugees were scared out of their wits. They fled in panic and scattered. Sean's voice was suddenly covered by the commotion. Mago and his best friends didn't see him. They turned around and ran. Although Sean wanted to chase after them, he panicked when he saw the Raylan convoy approaching quickly. He could only run for his life with the refugees on his side. At this moment, the Raylan convoy rushed over. Teams of fully armed Raylan soldiers got out of the vehicles and chased after the refugees. At the same time, the armed convoy turned on the loudspeaker and shouted at the fleeing refugees. "Stop running, stop resisting. We will take you to the refugee camp. As long as you are obedient, Raylan will provide you with resources to ensure your survival." Some of the refugees had had enough of this kind of life. They had already reached their limit. When they heard the words, they simply fell to the ground and stopped running. They were held down by the Raylan soldiers behind them. There were also some refugees who didn't believe in Raylan. They continued to run, but their bodies were too tired to outrun the Raylan soldiers. They were caught like rabbits. One by one, they fell to the ground and couldn't get up. Using the refugees behind him to delay the Raylan soldiers, Sean used almost all of his strength to run into the ruins. However, his body had reached its limit. He knew that there was no way to escape if he continued to run like this. Suddenly, he saw a gap formed by the debris of the building. He simply chose one and hid in it, praying that he could avoid it. Boral, who was following behind, saw Sean's actions. In his panic, he followed suit and hurriedly hid in the gaps between the ruins of the building. Sean only revealed half of his face. He looked at the situation outside in shock. He saw the refugees outside being held down one by one. Some of them struggled too hard and were directly knocked out by the Raylan soldiers. As he looked around, Sean suddenly saw the figures of Marg and his buddies. He saw that Marg and his buddies were finally caught up. Several Raylan soldiers rushed up and hit Marg and his buddies on the cheek with the butt of their rifle. They were knocked to the ground and quickly subdued. Sean was scared and anxious. He wanted to think of a way to save them, but his mind was in a mess. He looked at the fully armed Raylan soldiers. Fear gripped his heart. His legs trembled. He didn't have the courage to step out. Instead, he shrank into the depths of the gap. He didn't dare to breathe. In the end, he could only watch as his buddies were dragged into the vehicles by the Raylan soldiers, leaving a few winding blood trails on the ground. Sean's lips were white and trembling. There was never a moment when he hated himself so much. He couldn't do anything. Not long after, the refugees who didn't have time to hide were caught by the Raylan soldiers. Soon, a group of soldiers with weapons came to search this place. Sean didn't have time to worry about others. He subconsciously covered his mouth and didn't dare to breathe. At this moment, Frank, who was also hiding in the gap not far away, walked out with his hands raised. He was trembling and knelt on the ground. His expression was a mixture of fear, uneasiness, and hope. I won't resist." The Raylan soldiers didn't say anything and went up to subdue Frank. Frank was in pain and subconsciously turned his head to look in the direction where Sean was hiding. Sean's brain went blank. Before he could react, the footsteps outside quickly approached. A big hand suddenly reached into the gap, grabbed his clothes, and pulled hard. He couldn't compete with the strength of the Raylan soldiers and fell out. His clothes were still grabbed by the strong arm. He was so scared that his legs were flailing like a fish. He subconsciously struggled. But at this moment, another Raylan soldier quickly came forward. The bow of the rifle quickly enlarged in Sean's eyes. Dong! Sean's vision turned black and he lost consciousness. After an unknown period of time, Sean's brain gradually restarted. He only felt a splitting headache and a burning pain on his forehead. Sean opened his eyes with difficulty. He only felt that everything in his vision seemed to have double shadows, like a flower screen. He endured the dizziness and looked around. He realized that he was in a moving carriage. Around him were some refugees who had been captured. Their faces were filled with distress. There were familiar faces from the same group, as well as unfamiliar refugees from Mago's group. However, Mago's best friends were not in this carriage. "You're awake?" Frank was also in the carriage. He quickly came over. Hearing the familiar voice, Sean turned to look at him. His eyes became quite complicated. "You, forget it." He originally wanted to ask why Frank took the initiative to expose himself. But before he spoke, he had the answer in his heart. So he didn't ask and just sighed. However, Frank lowered his head and murmured, "You know our situation. It's impossible to escape. And if we continue to wander outside, we will definitely starve to death. It's better to be taken away by Raylan. Say no more. My head hurts. How's your injury?" Sean was flustered. He didn't want to talk about it anymore and changed the topic. "It's swollen here, but it's okay. It's not a serious injury." "That's good." Sean sat up and took a deep breath. He struggled to get to the window and looked out. He saw that the convoy had already driven out of the city ruins and arrived at the original suburbs. A continuous stretch of temporary camps appeared in the distance. It was one of the refugee camps set up by Raylan. But in Sean's eyes, it was like a ferocious beast waiting for its prey to arrive. "We can survive, right?" Sean's tone was uneasy. Perhaps it was because there was no other choice. Frank seemed to have grasped at the only life-saving straw. He only had blind faith in his own choice and nodded vigorously. "As long as we are obedient, we will definitely survive." That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.